Hello, everyone. Welcome back. First, a couple quick announcements. Starting next week, so today is December 18th, 2024. Next week is Christmas. And next Wednesday, which would be my normal streaming day, will be on Christmas. I will not be streaming on Christmas Day. However, what I am looking to do is shift my stream a little bit in time. And so rather than being on what is Wednesday evening for me as my usual time, will end up being Thursday evening, probably going forward in 2025. So just be aware, if you are one of my regular viewers who likes to drop in, starting next year, Thursday nights, not Wednesday nights. Or if you're in Europe or something, you just roll everything forward 24 hours. So just to be aware of that. Hopefully it'll give me a bit of a break between some other commitments I have going on, so I'm not so rushed and tired that I've been fighting with my stream as of late, and will give me a bit of a buffer, which is what we are going for. Okay, let's dive in on a couple of things. First, there's something really, really cool. So GitKraken released a new update. Hang on, I am missing my tooling. Really got to get it set to go on. So I am on, if I can do this right again, right? So this, there we go, 10.6.0. That is the new release. Now, if we go up here to help and we check out release notes, right? There's a lot of stuff in here. This one right here. This makes me incredibly happy. Custom external editors. Okay? Let me show you why this is so cool. So before, underneath the file menu, you could always come in here and you could do file, and you could, open your repo in your file explorer, open in VS Code, and that was cool. But what if you have something other than VS Code that you want to use? Hypothetically, Visual Studio, right? So what you do is you go up here to File, Preferences. See if I can remember where all of this ends up being. And then, was it the experimental one? No, I should have read the message a little closer. Where is the external editors, external tools? There we go. Let's see, external editor, external terminal command. This is actually a worthwhile thing to point out if you haven't done this before. This is the magical incantation if you want to use Windows Terminal. So the WT is Windows Terminal, followed by D for directory, and then #D will feed it on in. Okay, where did it say that thing was again? Preferences, external tools. Oh, default external editor. See, I was in the right place. I gotta learn how to read. External tools, external editor, custom. Right? And so then what you do is, if you're like me, you open up everything, and for Visual Studio, it's dev env .exe, right? And I will point out I am running preview builds. So if you are not on Visual Studio preview builds, yours will be slightly different, but it'll be something similar to this, right? So you're looking for that. So in my case, all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the full name or the file path, and you can see here, you can see the arguments that are going to be passed down here. But here's the best part: you just do it like this. Right, and then I'm going to go over here to this live file repo, and then we can go open repo and external editor. And if Visual Studio would pick the right monitor, huzzah, and it opens. And the cool part is Visual Studio kind of keeps a little bit of a memory of what you've wanted it to do with different directories. And aside from this little untrusted down here, where's the trust repository? Boom. And we are up and running. So if you want to have GitKraken because you live in Visual Studio like me for most of your stuff rather than VS Code, file preferences, external tools, external editor to custom, and then browse to your Visual Studio path, which will probably be under your program files, Microsoft Visual Studio, And then, you know, depending on what year you're watching this in the future, 2022's latest as of December 2024, right? And I'm running preview build, so I'm underneath preview, and then common 7, IDE, dev env, or you can just hunt for dev env. Or honestly, even if you've got the shortcuts, you can right click on them and view them there. So wonderful, wonderful, wonderful feature. I get excited about the weirdest updates. This is one I'm really excited about because this is something I have wanted for a while now. So very, very excited about that. There's also some cool stuff around here in terms of like customizing Launchpad views, which is something I've been very excited about because now it's actually giving you a way to edit those, which is great. The other one, and we'll see how it goes. Oh, it picked it up. Great to see everything searched. Been using it for 10 years now. Yeah, Todd, it's actually one of my go-to things. People give me crap when I'll say just win-get install everything, and they're like, what? And yeah, it is one of my favorites. I actually bind my new window command to control Alt-Shift-S, so I've got a global hotkey to pop it up. A colleague of mine mocked me at one point that I use it as almost like a file launcher. I'm like, it's just so fast. Whenever I want to find something, it does one thing really, really, really well. And so it's been my go-to thing on there. So absolutely love it. Okay, so something else. Sorry, 1 second. There was a mosquito buzzing me, and I'm trying to figure out how a mosquito has gotten anywhere near me since it's about 40 degrees outside. I don't know how the heck he survived. Yeah, absolutely incredible indexing. On my live stream, I recently reformatted my computer, which is something I typically do about on a yearly basis. It feels like spring cleaning, and I tend to do it usually around the holidays time because I have more downtime, and it's like, okay, let's get everything clean. Usually my system fills up throughout the year with me installing random garbage, and it's like, just format and start over. It also helps me verify that I'm actually properly backing up my stuff, because if it doesn't survive through the format, I probably didn't care that much about it. That's my rationale. Some people will disagree with me. But one of the things that I realized I did not have backed up very well was the countdown timer that I use for my stream. Now, OBS will basically just do a file watcher, and so naturally what I did is I wrote a little command line tool that just updates a file with a countdown timer. That's it. That's the sum total of this entire endeavor, right? If anybody wants to play at home, let's see, repo is here. It's not something I was necessarily planning on even like releasing for other people or whatnot, because it's like I built it for me. It works well for the user I care about, which is me. But I realized that I haven't been updating this, and the command that I was doing to run this wasn't running it as a global tool. It was just a .NET running it, and I'm like, I should really update this. So we are going to update this to make it have it not be quite as sucky. So, but to update this is going to require updating a few things. So first of all, we launched this guy, and I think I already had it open. I did already have it open. Boom. So now I've got it open twice. Great. That's not going to cause any problems. So first of all, it's flagging me saying I don't have this version of .NET installed, which again formatted my system recently, and shockingly, I did not reinstall .NET 7. Okay, well that's kind of a problem, right? And we do have kind of this publish as local tool, and we've got some cleanup here, but it's not quite the system that I'm looking for, or that I was hoping to go for. So what I would like to do first, and this is going to be where we hop through a few hoops. I have some .NET templates that I absolutely love using. Your current branch main has conflicts with changes. See, this is one of their other new features, and I'm not sure I like it. How do I tell it base branches? Yeah, I don't care. There, exit preferences. There, now stop complaining. My other one flagged it and then it went away, and I don't really know what I did to make it do that because I didn't change that setting on the other one. It is an interesting idea for a feature, right? Is if you are on a branch, because GitKraken does fetches in the background on an interval, it can warn you when there's conflicts. Because I habitually like to rebase when I see other changes go in, just to make sure that I try to avoid conflicts. But being notified ahead of time of conflicts is an interesting thing. It's like, my opinion is there are times where it's really helpful and times where it's like, I just stay out of my way. I know I'm walking into conflicts. I'll deal with it when I get there. Anyway, okay, file. Oh, I can't have both open repo in external editor and open repo in. Oh, that's that. I just realized something, because depending on what repo I'm in, I want the tool to be different. Ooh, that's an interesting problem. Okay, open in File Manager. We'll do it this way then. Let's see here. Oh, do I not have? Oh, I don't even have code set up on my thing. So that's the roundabout way of getting there. Okay. Yes, I trust the authors of this repo, mostly because they are me. Okay. So I've got a template. I've got a console. I just want to validate that the console app one here. See, these are all net 8, and I'm trying to decide if I rev my templates to net 9 or not. I think net 8 is probably fine considering it's LTS. I don't know. This feels like one of those things where I want to put in a setting, but yeah. But the important thing here is that tells me that this is more than enough up to date. And what we are going to do here, I need to make you bigger. That font size is way too small. Can I just do it here? No. That only does the whole GitKraken window. Sorry, one moment. Preferences, let's see, UI customization. Where is my font settings? I know there's a font setting in here somewhere. For in-app terminal, there we are. Font size, be big. And then Cascadia, I think is what we're going for here. There. That's better. Okay, so .NET new, let's see, install, what is my, should have probably looked at what the name of my template repo is. I've got it on my README though. That's what I want. Paste, install. Following templates will be installed. Huzzah. All right. So now if I just do .NET new, let's see, Kaboo console, right? It's going to give me an error and say, oh no, it's going to overwrite files. And I go -- force, do it. I want you to overwrite files. This is one of the ways, like, there's not a clean way of doing updates to templates, but when you're in source control, this kind of gets you pretty close. So for example, this gives me my Dependabot updates. Great. It gives me a build and deploy step. Great. That's what I'm looking for. It gives me code coverage, all of that stuff automatically turned on. This repo didn't previously have my editor config in it. Great. That's now fixed. I don't really need directory build props in here. We're gonna kind of bump this up and build targets. It added an exclusions dictionary, which wasn't there. Launch settings, great. This is where we probably are going to need to undo some stuff. So it rev from net 7 to net 8. I accept that. The nullability is there. I think I want to, let's see, let's do side by side. So this discard I'd like to keep. Let's see, and this switch to command line from Dragonfruit. I think we're going to discard this line. We're going to need to go through and address it here at some point. Let's see here. We need to edit this file here and just get rid of that section altogether. Great. Let's see. So we drop the package tool command name. I'm trying to decide. I think that's covered in the props file. It's not. Okay, so let's put that back. So tool command name, discard. Let's see. This is adding inversion and turning on nullability. I think that's okay, but I think the pipeline actually, no, the pipeline lets the version flow through. How was this thing versioning before? Or maybe it wasn't versioning, and that was part of the problem of why I didn't publish it as a tool. See, this is why I need my stuff. Otherwise, I botched this releasing stuff. So there's that. Let me go look out on NuGet real quick and make sure I haven't published this. Yep, not there yet. So I never did publish this. Okay, so there's that. Wonder why that shows as a new file. Oh, probably because I ran it at some point. I think what I want to do is add that to the ignore list, because that's the file that I typically have OBS watch, but I don't really want that following in here. This thing added in a set of tests, which aren't bad, but I don't know that we need them. We'll leave them for now. Lots of updates on the git ignore. I approve. We're probably going to have to fix this in here because I believe what we're going to be looking for is not command line, but dragon fruit. So we'll fix that in here. We probably want to switch this out and just do NuGet.org, but we'll check it. And then I don't really want the template, the README from the template. Okay. That gets me to there. That gets me to there. You reload. Okay. Dependencies are going to be unhappy because this package reference needs to end up in my directory packages.props. Boom, boom, boom. And then this goes from package reference to package version. And then here we drop the version out of it because we're using centralized package management. And I think we might go straight to net9 here. But I wanna see it run first. Yeah, shut up. I know you're unhappy, Visual Studio. I changed your universe. I get it. Let's see, because I think what we want to do is I want to go 13 and I want to go net9 on all the things. I'm trying to decide if it's worth even keeping the test. There are a lot of overhead for not a lot of gain, but I mean it's not gonna, like, this is basically gonna validate, can the thing start with help? Sure, fine. Why not? It's not hurting that much. Okay, so I don't need that directly, I don't believe. Yeah, because we can take the transitive dependency all the way through. All of those are testing dependencies. Those need to be there. We've got our global usings. Good. We've got this. We've got this. We've got this. Net9. Everybody still compiles now? Let's see. Project asset JSON does not have. Yeah. I get you. You are unhappy. So we need to clean the solution. Typically, when you start changing target frameworks, if you're on the command line, running a .NET restore will go a long way. Let's see. Reference to type iConsole claims it is defined in system command line, but could not be found. Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. Okay, so this is likely the change from here. right? Is there a package source now that is pointed at the nightlies, and I don't think, or dailies, I guess is what they were calling it. I don't think we actually want that for dragon fruit on this guy. I think we want to pull it exclusively from NuGet.org. I think we want to get rid of this reference here, and we want to just pick this one up. Because the thing here is dragon fruit is, oh, we didn't undo the change to program CS. So that's going to be a problem. That's kind of like a real important file. Like, we don't want any of the changes here, right? We want to leave the app running as it did. So throw that away, right? Because the whole point of dragon fruit is you can write a strongly typed main method and have it just work. Let's see here. Clean up the unused usings. And see here. So that gets me to there. That gets me to there. What's left? Program is inaccessible due to its protection level. Probably because I didn't set one. Public. Oh, interesting. Because I have this turned up, it's unhappy that I don't have XML comments. Yeah. Oh, hey, Karnak, you are installed and you are in the wrong position. Sorry, I gotta save. There, that is fine, but that is way too big of a font size. I'll need to go look up my settings. I keep them in a Git repo. There, that's closer to right. Go with something like that for tonight. That'll work. Okay. Where my errors? Program is inaccessible. Let's see. And actually, maybe getting rid of these tests is probably better, because you are going to cause me no end of problems, and I'm not gaining any value out of you. So we're going to drop .NET test. We're going to drop the report generator. We don't need the PR number writing because that's for the code coverage report. So we don't need any of that. We just need these. We want the Dependabot auto merges and the publishes. We'll have to go set up a NuGet API key. We don't need code coverage because we got rid of the tests. Though I have a sinking suspicion that just removed it. Yeah. Kill that. So that gets us to there. So we solved one bug by just deleting the file. Can't have a bug if it's not there. Okay, so this gets me up and running. Yeah, because this literally is just a loop with writing and stuff. It's not complicated. Yeah, at some point I want to make this a friendlier formatty bit, but for now it works. Okay, so that gets me to there. That gets me to there. And now kind of want to check this. And so in my launch settings, rather than display help, let's do countdown. Let's see, and then, oh, missed the comma here. This will be the command name, project, and then command line args, and this is where I want to paste in my stuff from here into here. Okay, so we're gonna have some fun escaping problems, but that'll be, it's neither here nor there, because I need this to be more like this. This is ugly. And what was the... Sorry, I'm having to count my backslashes. And this is why the time format's kind of ugly. Because I have to escape it for JSON to escape it for the terminal. Which is all kinds of exciting. I don't think we need that. We just need that. Okay. But what that means is now up here, I have an option for countdown. All right. So, and now when it launches, it's going to automatically pass those parameters into my program. And I just want to make sure that when I launch this, I get the expected values passed in. Okay. Countdown to 9 p.m. Great. End message. Stream starting soon. Good. Timer format. Starting in. I don't know if this is actually going to do what I want. Output file. Keep file. And let's see. Exited with code. Blah, blah, blah. So we did die, but I didn't see an exception. So let's go find it. Running countdown, great. Write file. Oh, it's probably because we are actually at the end. Because we are post 9 p.m. So that worked rather well. And then stream starting soon because that's the ending one. Let's change the launch settings to test something in the future. Let's see. Do this. And now if I run it. Continue. Running countdown. And if we open up output, we should see it writing. Oh, it's not going to be writing to this output.txt. Oh, we can delete this one then. Because this one is... It's going to be the one actually in our bin debug directory because we didn't specify a different path. Oh boy. Targeted a few things here. Let's see. LMNO. So I got an extra one there. So it didn't actually do the stream format the way I expected. I think I need to dial down this ugly mess because I think if I can do this, well, hold on, because it should be feeding it into a string format. And I'm wondering if that extra... let's look at where this goes. It's been so long since I wrote this. Timer format. So it expects that to be a string format, but it is not. But a string format would still look like this. All right, so I don't know why I put so many backslashes in it. Stream starting in, and then this would become 0 colon minute second there. Oh, but I just edited the wrong thing. Got it. So I think what I want is this actually, which is better because this is what I wanted to look at in the first place anyway. I'm guessing that PowerShell script is out of date. And then this needs to become 0 colon. I think this one actually might need trying to remember the rules around colons inside of a format string. because we have interpolated strings, the colon has meaning. But if we go here, not bad. I should be able to go here and see it counting down. It will work. Now, obviously, if it was auto reloading, it would be going faster, but that feels a lot nicer. Okay, so we are going to get rid of... I don't need this PowerShell anymore. I don't need this output anymore. And now the only thing I need to do is this guy here is going to publish to NuGet.org if I create a NuGet API key for him. So we're going to actually publish this sucker. You here. And I'm going to try to do it without doing something wrong and showing as much as I can. So inside of GitHub, you can create secrets, and depending on how you want to scope them, in this case, because this is going to be around this project, I'm going to scope it for the repository level. And then the name of it needs to match what was in my YAML, which was NuGet API key. Then we go to NuGet.org. And then I'm going to drag this off screen for a second until I see what's visible. Make sure I'm not about to show something that I shouldn't. So once you log in, it's going to be your name in the corner down here to API keys. Again, just going to drag that sucker off because I don't remember what it's going to show. Okay, so I think we can do this. So once you create an API key, we're going to give it a key name. In this case, live file will be good enough for me. I'm going to give it a glob pattern of live files because that's the package name that we're actually going to be publishing out. Hey, Izzy. We are powwowing on doing a couple updates. Currently, since I formatted my machine, my little terminal app that does a countdown for me at the beginning of my stream, yeah, I accidentally torched my script for running it, so oops. But in fixing that, I realized I had never actually published this app as a global tool, because the first thing I went to do was install it as a global tool, and it said not found, and I went, oh, Kevin, you're an idiot. So we're publishing it, and I'm revving it to Net9 and updating it to my .NET template, because that's what I do. Okay. So this guy here, yeah, so we don't specify it, so it is going to follow this guy here. So live file should be the appropriate glob pattern for him. And then I'm going to drag this API key screen off because when I hit create, I'm pretty sure it's about to show me a private key, and I'd like to not have that on the screen. Oh, that's a good call out, Natural Cause. I think you are absolutely correct. That is probably a bug. So I'm trying to figure out why this thing is not letting me click the create button. Oh, there it went. Okay. So the end result of clicking is you get something like this, and points awarded to NuGet for not making it visible. I'm going to click the copy button. I'm going to come over here to my GitHub action. I'm going to drag this off the screen, and I'm going to hit paste and add secret. And there we go. See, that's how we do this without accidentally revealing your API key. So then you end up with a secret here. But Natural Cause called out something very accurate. Is I revved my target framework to Net9, but then my YAML file is ensuring that I have .NET 8 set up here, which is somewhat problematic. There is something I've been considering putting into my templates, which is a global.json file. This setup.net, you can specify explicit versions here. But the other thing that you can do is if you create a global.json, let's see. All right, this guy. This is the guy. Right, so for those people who want to play along, you can set one of these up, and there's pluses and minuses with it. So this will determine which version of the SDK gets used, because if all you have is running .NET on the command line, what ends up happening is if I just go .NET -- list SDKs, but I spell it correctly, right? I have 3 SDKs installed. And so which one is going to get used is going to be latest. Because .NET assumes that when I run .NET commands that, yeah, you probably want the latest SDK that you have installed. Which is fine until it's not. When you want to use something else or you want to specify something else. So a global.json gives you control over which version of the SDK gets picked. So it will forward there. Yeah, Izzy. So for next week, for next week and all of 2025, my intent is to actually push my stream back a day. So for me, that's Thursday evening. But I know you're in a different time zone. So add 24 hours to whatever time it is now. And that's my intent. Effectively, my Tuesday evenings, I've got stuff that runs late into the evenings. So I'm in Washington State, so West Coast United States. But I've got stuff Tuesday evenings, and so I'm oftentimes going crazy and trying to get caught up for Wednesday night stream, and I think I just need some buffer space between those two events. So my intent is to stream on Thursdays, not Wednesdays. That way I get that buffer, and hopefully I'm not as burned out as I've been on the last couple. So yeah, no problem, Izzy. I need to go through and change my schedule on Twitch so that it actually reflects that as well. So those things. But this global.json is one of the things that's like, this might be a nice thing to bring in. Most of the time it works perfectly great. The only time I get bit by it is when there's been a handful of situations where I've needed to compile with different SDKs at different points. And it's kind of like, it's not usually a big deal, and it's really rare to do this. So I probably should just put this into my template. Crap, maybe we'll put it in my template. The advantage of putting it in the template is as follows, right? Is then I don't get bit. So if we grab this repo here and go look at it. So pro tip, if you didn't know this, GitHub Actions, if you ever want to go look them up, github.com/ paste action name, enter. Because they're just repos. That's all they are. They aren't fancy. They're repos that have a well-defined format, specifically this action.yaml. And there's a few other things. But rather than specifying a .NET version, you can, or versions, right? And this is where it's like, it works and it doesn't. You can actually come down here and tell it to use your global.json file instead. That way, your tooling looks at the global.json, your GitHub Action looks at the global.json. You only have to rev your stuff in one place, which is kind of convenient. In one place, right? Like, you still have to rev your target framework in your CS proj, but when you want to rev your SDK version, you rev it in the global.json. Usually people keep those in sync, but your target framework and your SDK version don't have to be in sync, right? People always forget that because they're like, oh, I can't use the latest .NET 9 because we have to still target .NET 8 because it's LTS. It's like, you can use the .NET 9 SDK to pick up language features and improvements and still target .NET 8 so that your end users have, the LTS version or whatever it is. So, but worth putting something like this. I may at minimum, maybe what I should do is I should at least leave it commented out in my template. That way it's an easy switch if people want it. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do that. Regardless, back to publishing. So now that we have the secret created, I think we just send this sucker. Let's see here. So we've got pipeline, Dependabot, updated editor config. Oh, we revved our Lang version, implicit usings, nullability, accelerate builds. My template sets up user secrets, but this one isn't using it. That file's empty. There's no exclusions. Launch settings. We converted this to centralized package management. We actually started versioning it, which is kind of important. Killed the PowerShell we don't care about. We don't actually need this anymore since we killed the test project. That part is kind of meaningless. So we'll just drop the usings. Apparently I did not. Let's see. Discard changes in folder. Apparently I just deleted from the solution. Didn't kill the files. Oops. Let's see. Directory packages. That means we can actually clean up some of these packages as well, because we don't need all of these. That's something I'm waiting for somebody to invent for me, is something that will kill off. In fact, I think I can get down to just the one. I need a nice way of cleaning up these centralized packages. So arguably, when you only have a single NuGet package and a single project, centralized package management doesn't buy you a lot. But it lines up with my template, which makes it grow better in the future. So we're doing it. Let's see, solution file updates, not a big deal. A lot of it's just the solution level items being added. Great. NuGet config, great. We're off to the races. Making it a real thing. You can see my commit message. Boom. Okay. Why are you flagging me? Did I not set? I thought I set this. Did I not set this? There. Shut up. How do you do versioning, Git versioning? Oh, so two good questions. So the versioning that I do for my .NET Global Tools is I actually manually rev the version inside my CS proj when I want it to go. Because what my template will do for publishing is it will where is it? Skip duplicates, right? So I can just push as much as I want, and when I'm ready to release to NuGet, because pushing the NuGet package to NuGet.org is functionally releasing your global tool. So I just rev the version in my CS proj. And I find for global tools, because most of mine are fairly small in a lot of cases, I find that to be fairly simplistic. Not a lot of complicated, make a git tag, do different things like that. Like for more complicated apps, we could talk about doing some more interesting versioning. But for .NET Global Tools, I find this to be very easy. Oh, and the natural cause, why Dragonfruit over Spectre? Great question. So Spectre is amazing. And I will still use Spectre.console for anything where I care about my terminal output, because like in my opinion that's Spectre's sweet spot. Like it can make some really pretty looking terminal output. This app though, like its purpose in life is file output, not terminal output. So and Dragonfruit, I like. This is just really easy for something that I wanted to go quick and dirty with. My console template doesn't leverage Dragonfruit, only because Dragonfruit doesn't scale up nicely. Like Dragonfruit will give you a strongly typed main method, but the moment you say, "Hey, I want to do like subcommands," you got to throw Dragonfruit away and start over, which is kind of like, it's really great if you've got a nice small CLI that you want to build. Like it demos awesome and it goes great. It just doesn't have a good grow up story. Again, in this case, this was just a small, simple one. So it was like, it's not going to grow up ever. So good enough. Okay. and now my email gets exploded while Dependabot goes crazy. I probably should have gone. It hasn't been updated since 2022. Yeah. I need to pick my words carefully. So Dragon Fruit was built historically as a example and proof of concept. The team behind System Command Line, and I'm picking my words carefully because I'm technically part of the team. So feel free to throw things at me. Like, it was built really nice. Ironically, Nate McMaster, I think, was the one who actually put together the first working sample of Dragon Fruit. Right? There was a couple people on the team that kind of had the idea and prototyped some stuff, but I think Nate McMaster at a hackathon actually here in Spokane, Washington, I think was the first time I actually saw Dragon Fruit work, which was pretty slick. And honestly, the output of that from that hackathon, I think is fairly close to where it sits today. But it hasn't received a lot of love, largely the grow up story. And then the other drawback is System Command Line was built because Microsoft didn't have a good story to tell when it came for console applications. Like System.console is not an exciting... isn't he a wrestler? System.console, the class, is not a very exciting story to tell when you're like, yeah, this is how you build console apps in C#, and everybody looks at like every other modern programming language and goes, they have so much better stuff for building console apps. Why isn't there something in the box, right? So System Command Line's target was to be the thing in the box, and it is the thing that's actually inside, like the .NET SDK. So if you look up the .NET EXE and you look at how it's processing the command line, you will see System Command Line in there. So it is in there for that, but I don't think I'm out of line saying this. I would not ever expect Dragon Fruit to GA from Microsoft. I think I'll put it that way. Ironically, someone else who's helped with System Command Line quite a bit is Patrick, the person behind Spectre Console. So, like, some people are like, oh, these things are all competing with each other. It's like, no, like, we've had Patrick, the guy behind Spectre, helping out on System Command Line. We've had Nate McMaster, who arguably has one of the other big .NET CLI libraries out there, helping on the project. Like, this is kind of a frenemy situation, because if the space and the tooling improves around it, everyone wins. So it's like, yeah, they're competing-ish, but if it means developers get a better experience, everyone gets happier, because nobody wants the .NET ecosystem feeling like it's behind somebody else. Okay, so let's go take a quick gander, because apparently I didn't rev one of my NuGet packages, and I've already got this guy off to the races, and this is something else I need to script, is the setup of my repositories, because it bothers me that these things don't work nicely. But this thing should, so there's the Dependabot build, Dependabot updates, build and deploy. This has a workflow dispatch event trigger. What? Did I not? No, it doesn't. Oh, that's why Get Kraken didn't like it either. Oh, this is one of my older repos. That's okay. Okay, I'm an idiot. That's the problem. Branch name's wrong. See, this is why I need a script for updating my GitHub repos, because I've got a lot of like branch policies and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's not necessarily going to be a version 2 yet, because nothing's hit NuGet.org because the pipeline didn't run. So, But at least now, so we'll pull to pick up the merge from before, and then we will bump this and go fix branch names on GitHub Action. Yeah, the guy who wrote Newtonsoft also played a big part in systemtext.json. Yeah, and that is the thing, like, and at some point in time, I kind of see, like, there's areas where they very much overlap, but systemtext.json is unapologetic in some of the features that they will not implement. Because to get some features requires a sacrifice in performance, and systemtext.json was largely built because ASP.NET Core did not want to take any hit to performance, right? And so there's been a lot of features that have existed in Newtonsoft for years, and some systemtext.json is slowly implementing, but some they may never implement because it would require extra processing time. So haven't had to switch back to systemtext.json since Net 6. Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, I usually tell them it's like it depends on what you need to do. Yeah, Newtonsoft supports a lot of bizarre scenarios, and I think a lot of it comes down to Newtonsoft was built back when JSON was first becoming popular, and so there was a lot of kind of figuring out what does that interop story need to look like, especially across different languages and similar. Hey, look, now it's actually building. Didn't work, but it built. So it gets you. So it kind of has some extra stuff there to be able to go through and do. Like some of its circular reference stuff is interesting. And it follows a common pattern, but I wouldn't say a spec. Let's see. .NET Pack, no build. Pack as tool does not support self-contained. Well, what did I do wrong? Oh. I know what I did wrong. I know exactly what I did wrong. Right here, I left pack as tool true, and I don't believe I intended to do that because there is, but that isn't a change. Oh, but let me, okay, sorry, I gotta look at, this is why I have templates, so I can remember how the heck I did it the first time. Yeah, so we don't actually need / want that. Okay. Off. I believe that is the old name, and I don't think I actually need tool command name either, since we're following the package name, which is what it's going to default. Let's see. Remove pack as tool, and actually real quick, let's just test this. .NET pack go. Let's just test it a little bit. Maybe test it before we send it. Okay. Stable release of a package should not have a pre-release dependency. Shut up. Not real concerned about that. So now we send it. And now it works flawlessly, and we publish, and everyone's happy. Then I think we'll go publish another package. Why not? We're on a roll. Because the material design library has been lacking some love as of late, mostly from me. Like it's not due to a lack of other people's contributions. So we'll get some of these things. Did this one ever get updated after I posted the feedback? No updates. Interesting. Okay, I might need a follow-up. Worst case scenario, I'll just apply the patch and do it. Push to NuGet.org. Huzzah! So short version, if you use my template to build a global tool, you do just need to come in here to your secrets and variables, create one called NuGet API key, give it your API key, and you too can be on NuGet.org. And then once this thing indexes, which will take it a little bit to index. Let me move this over here because I don't know what it's about to show. So we're just going to put you over here for just a quick second. Especially for your first package, it will almost always take it. I think they advertise that it can take up to an hour, which is always exciting. Why do I not see it? Not another release. Well, are you running preview builds, Izzy? Because this would be a full release of 5.2. But we're gonna check the PRs because there's usually my metric is when I start getting bug reports for things that are already fixed. It means I've delayed releasing too long. That's usually the way I measure. Okay. But it has not been indexed yet. Okay, well, we'll come back. We'll come back in a little bit because this should, let me just verify from the output, but it should show a successful push. Your package was pushed. Great. Live file 001. So should just work. Okay, so leave that there for now, and let's go here. Let's go here. Okay, let's do... okay, I thought I had a... Oh, I don't have this one, so I want here, and then I would like to... Yeah, let's check out this branch, and then let's review code. Oh, JC, thank you. Yes, okay, that's a good question. So, for anybody who tuned in last week and got to experience several hours of my frustration and hatred and burning pain and suffering, yes, it did get solved. Let me show you what it ended up being. I was very annoyed when I finally got it. So pull requests and then closed because it has merged and there was a release of Velopack earlier today that had it in. So let's see, dependencies. Whoa, Kalen merged a ton of stuff. Where the heck is it? Rock file maintenance, dependency. Whoa, am I already on page 2 after only a day? Wow, I'm at the bottom of page 2 2 days ago. Holy cow. No. So what got really interesting is there are some consumers of there was some consumers of Velopack who use it for a game that they have, and they made a comment at one point that they had to abandon the bundled SignTool exe that was inside of Velopack and grab an older version out of the NuGet package. And I went, that's interesting. I wonder why that is. But they gave us the version. So I went back and I grabbed that old NuGet package and pulled the SignTool exe out of it, dropped it in, got the exact same behavior. And I went, that doesn't seem right. Something's off. And so I started comparing, because they gave a really good breakdown of what they had looked at and what they had done. And I started comparing what they did versus what we had. And one of the things that caught my eye was I was pulling SignTool exe out by itself, not grabbing any of the other DLL dependencies. And I went, you know what?
I wonder what happens if I bring every single binary, even the other EXEs, out of the NuGet package and not just the ones that are inside of, and not just the ones that look like they're related to SignTool. And that, as soon as I did that, it magically started working. I went, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's very, very interesting. So I went down the path of looking, because the Azure Trusted Signing, they give you like an SDK, a PowerShell module, a GitHub action, like a NuGet package. They give you like 4 or 5 ways to get the tooling you need, right? And we started pulling apart because they give you all these different tooling things, but they all call each other. So like the GitHub action pulls in the PowerShell module and invokes that. I'm like, okay, that's cheating, guys. That's cheating. And the PowerShell module downloads the NuGet package to get the SignTool out. I'm like, okay, I see how this is work. This is just, they're not, here's 5 different ways to get the tool. Here's different layers on the same onion, and you're still biting the onion. But once I realized that it was all of the dependencies in there, I started looking at the application manifest files that were next to SignTool exe, and they were using assembly redirects to point into other DLLs that were inside of the NuGet package. So I walked down and followed the assembly redirects. I think it was like 2 or 3 layers deep, and it ended up being, I think, well, what did it end up being? 8 or 9 files? There was a handful of files in here. Where are they? There's going to be it's down to the bottom. Yeah, so all of the DLLs that were needed were all of these ones in order to get it to work. So I had to go through, and these are all the assembly identities and the manifest to be able to bring them across. So all of these were what were required to get it to work. I think, and I don't know this for a fact, I am willing to bet that on my Windows system, and on Kaylin's Windows system as well, that some variant of one of these assemblies is probably in our GAC, the Global Assembly Cache, which is one of the places that DLLs can be resolved from when they are needed. I am willing to bet that on Windows Server 2022, that same assembly is not in the GAC, and because we weren't pulling it out of the NuGet, it just wasn't there, and the parameter missing error that we were getting, I think, was not a parameter to SignTool, but SignTool was invoking one of these other assemblies that was attempting to make a call down into something in certificate land on Windows, and that call is where there was the bad parameter. That is what I think was happening. But what I know is that bringing in all of this garbage, magic occurs and it works. So that was the pain and suffering. Hey, Furry, welcome. About to do some reviews on the material design library. Let's see. So my Friday this week has probably just become download NuGet into big external hard drive, then copy into private repo manager, then go upgrade every project known to people. Gosh. Sorry, Izzy. I feel bad now. Okay. Let's see. Add missing attach property radio button assist to style. This is going to be a real short code review. Because I have a strange feeling that if we go look at this, that this file here probably has this exact same binding up on a different style, and we're just forwarding it down. That is my working theory. Let's just go here. And let's go here. And here. Oh, and here. That's all I want to do. So I just want to see this file. So there's that. Oh. You got to click so these arrow buttons go to the different diffs. These ones go to instances in the file. Okay. Yeah. So this one up here, material design radio button, had them set there.
And this one is adding them to the material design user foreground radio button. Got it. And this is all because this one had a separate template. Now I'm curious if there's any more that I need to be concerned with. Any tips for someone that is stuck progressing with C#.net? Kind of off topic. No. Don't apologize for off topic stuff. I love talking C#.net. Where are you at in terms of, I guess, because you say you're stuck in progressing. I assume you're referring to advancing your skills or similar. Kind of where are you at? What kind of projects or things have you done? I guess maybe that'll kind of drive my answer a little bit, depending on where you're at, Furry. The private servers are in a cold room 3 buildings away. That's right, Izzy, and you have to use SneakerNet. For those people who are unfamiliar, SneakerNet is a fancy technical term for putting the file on a thumb drive, putting on your sneakers, and walking to the cold room that is 3 buildings away. This is a very easy approve. So, and then I just need to check and see. This is, got it. So that's just referencing another one. So this is easy. This is an easy approve. Easy approve. We'll let that one go through. And then enable auto merge. I mean, so Furry, in general, one of the things that I usually tell people is find something that you want to build. Like usually when I'm talking to like university students, that's oftentimes when people feel stuck, at least in that regard. It's students just trying to kind of get into their first job or similar, and oftentimes the best thing to do is build out or come up with a project that you want to work on, because you will do so much better if you are working on something that you enjoy building versus something else. Right? There's a little bit of trying to make sure that you're learning the right things, but that's not nearly as important as making sure you're building stuff. Sorry for my English. It's not my first language. That's totally fine. For the past 4 years of your life at a local company. Okay. So probably I'm guessing you're beyond kind of an entry level if you've been at it for 4 years and looking to advance further. So there, I guess a couple thoughts that I would have is what as you look back on the last year, what areas do you find that you struggled with the most? Like for me, I know that I can easily get set in my ways, and there's certain areas of C# and .NET that I like doing, and sometimes the learning of new languages or frameworks, it feels the most scary thing to me, and I don't always pick up new things as quick as other people seem to think that I do. So I guess the first thing I might say is think about what areas or like, especially if you're working at a company doing software development, what kind of tickets or things that you worked on, and figuring out what is. Let's see, lots of projects, all of them are software to administrate finances and accountability, so a lot of business logic and CRUD. Okay. And honestly, that's not actually that bad. So regardless of the domain that the stuff is in, whether it's finance or similar, there's always an element of fun. Like some people, I was having a talk with a colleague recently, and he was talking about how people always like working on the cool projects. I'm like, for me, I don't care as much about what the project is. I care more about how it's being built and the structure. Like I don't care whether it's working in finance, whether it's
working with videos or gaming or similar, like that doesn't make a big difference to me. I care more about like if the project is doing something interesting in any way. Like sometimes CRUD stuff is fine, and I don't mind just building stuff out. The last app that I worked on was basically an app to fill out a survey. Like, not exciting, but it was a really fun project because of how it was structured and laid out, and that made it exciting, even the domain wasn't there. A few things so depending on how much influence you have at the company, bugs in productions, yeah, and this may be an area where sometimes companies may not give you a lot of opportunity for skill advancement. It's very easy for people to get pigeonholed into, hey, you're the bug fixer, or you're the guy who gets to go and do the new features, or similar, right? And it can be a little bit difficult. So one of the things that we do at our company, or the ways that we try to grade kind of how far people are down that line, is you start off basically, you can basically work on bugs pairing with people, and then you can work on bugs independently. And usually the next step kind of beyond that is being able to either work on larger features. So maybe not necessarily starting a project from scratch, but beyond a bug saying, hey, I can go and build out a brand new feature or a brand new component to this application. That's usually the next step. The step beyond that is, okay, now you're feeling comfortable starting a project from scratch and getting something stood up there, because you kind of go from, you can work inside of a code base that somebody else built, and then I can add on to a code base that somebody else built, and then it kind of jumps and says, well, if you can already build something brand new on something existing, starting from scratch in some ways is easier, but people find it more daunting because there's a little bit more to know there. So those, I think, are probably next steps. The hard part can be, depending on the company you're at, the companies may not always give opportunities to go through those next steps, right? So if you are able to as part of your job, great, right? If it's a situation that you have where you could volunteer to, hey, take on a new feature or something of that nature, do it, right? That's probably the next step. If not, the other thing you can look to do is either work on something on your own, or find existing projects online to contribute to for like open source type related stuff as well. Oh, that's kind of cool. Okay, I think it's my fault. I just use Caboose templates for new stuff. Yeah, so if you have a lot of influence and can create a project from scratch, that's actually good then, because that would tell me that probably opens you up for an opportunity to be able to go through and do it. From there, I think the next steps are making sure that you can structure a project well. Because I don't know what to do to make the software better. I don't have anyone to tell me a path, tech lead or anyone. Okay, gotcha. So that definitely, that's hard. Just add Kevin all day. Victor. Victor works with me, and I'm hoping he's joking. Yeah, so one of the things I was told when I went through university was, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So on one hand, it's awesome that you have a lot of influence. On the other hand, when you are by yourself or kind of sitting up at the top on your own, that can be a bit of a red flag, because it is a little bit harder to grow. Even just having someone else kind of alongside you. I worked at a job at one point where it was just me and one other guy, but we were both, I'd like to think, fairly competent, and just us kind of going back and forth made each other better. So if it's possible to have somebody else to kind of bounce ideas off of, that is one way to do it. As far as how to make the software better, things to start to look for is quality metrics or quality gates, right? And people get real hung up on tooling and numbers and all of that. Don't do that. Don't do that. But if you want to know if you are making things better or worse, you start to look at how long does it take from the time somebody reports a bug until, you know, me or my team can get a fix out to them, right? If that time is getting shorter, you're doing better. If that time is getting longer, you're going down the wrong path, right? So you can start to gauge things a little bit that way of, hey, are things going faster or slower? And what kind of things can we look at to improve that? If you're looking to make the software better in terms of just sheer quality, you can look at things like testability, and people will get hung up on things like code coverage metrics and similar. Hang on, I gotta, let's see, Teletech blog, shift left. Shamelessly, I wrote a blog post, so yeah. So I'm just gonna, yeah, and honestly, if you study a lot, that goes a long way. Like, one of the things that I look for when I'm interviewing people is I look for people who like to learn. Like, one of my favorite interview questions to ask people is, how do you learn best? Right? And I don't really care what the answer is, but what I'm looking to see is, does the person, one, actively take an interest in self-learning? And two, do they know enough about themselves to actually answer that question? Because some people just go, well, I read a bunch of books. It's like, well, yeah, but do you learn well from reading? No. Okay, well, that's not a good choice. Like, don't do that. Not everybody learns from reading. Some people do. Some people do better by, you know, it's like, no, I can't read. I got to get like hands on the keyboard. Until I type it myself, I'm not going to learn it. Great, fine. If you know that about yourself, that's perfect. That's what you need to do. One of the things, and again, if we talk about, you know, what to learn, what to know, as far as important things that are worth looking into, again, that idea of measuring how long it takes you to get a fix out, and then how often do things regress, right? Like, it's nice if you can fix a bug and get a fix out quickly, but if fixing that one bug causes 3 other bugs, you haven't really made it better. Yeah, and honestly, even like there are software patterns like the domain-driven design reference there. You'll see references to things like clean architecture, and I think those are good. And I wish there was ways to have people struggle and fail, because sometimes I see people apply a lot of principles from those without knowing the why behind why they're doing it. Like, what is the benefit of a repository pattern or similar, right? Like, there's things like that come into play, and I see people doing them without understanding the why. And for me, like, if I've done something and I failed, I went, oh, this is the solution to that problem, right? We don't do it like that, because that's the type of thing that it can cause. And nothing else from the book. Don't worry. There's actually some really good stuff, depending on what you're looking for. Pluralsight has... Let me look here. There is a handful of really good courses in here. The domain-driven design one in here is actually fairly good. I went through and did it at one point. Specifically the one from Steve Smith is the one that I am looking for. Yeah, I think it was Julie and Steve that did it together? Yeah, this one. This one here. So if you're interested in learning about domain-driven design, like, this is not a bad course here. For what it's worth, I was given a free Pluralsight subscription, so I was doing a couple of them. and that was one that I did, and it was
worthwhile to understand domain-driven design. At minimum, I can't stand listening.
it's at least worth knowing the patterns, because I think sometimes people apply like domain-driven design on projects that don't need it, right? Like we just did that console app. It does not, like, it's not that big. It doesn't, no. No. There's a sizing thing in a lot of these patterns where it's, yes, you can have the patterns for this like global scale, but sometimes you don't need it, right? I work for a company that does professional services, which is a fancy way of saying consulting, and we work for a lot of like utilities. The thing is, utilities are usually in a small geographic region. They don't care about global scale. Like, that does not register to them. Some of them don't care about different time zones. Like, that is not a thing that matters because their world is this big. So there are things on there that are worth that are worth knowing, but it's good to understand the why. Yeah, and I see the comments in the chat there about people learn the patterns and then they get the. I usually refer to it as a hammer, right? When you've got a brand new golden hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? That you want to go the other way, right? Of you just because you've got a fancy new tool doesn't make everything a nail. Find the right tool for the job, and which is why I say that one of the scary things with a lot of those design patterns is I really like actually seeing people fail, right? Because if you can go through and fail at something or have a program that has a problem and then you see the design pattern to fix it, like my experience is at that point that design pattern is cemented in their head. They've got it now, right? Like, failing isn't always bad as long as you take learning from it. Yeah, well, and again, I don't want to encourage anybody to quit their job or anything, but it's worth considering the situation. Like, again, if there are no opportunities for learning at work, I think the question would be figuring out where there could be learning opportunities. Maybe that's a new job. Maybe that's open source work or similar. Like, I don't think I could ever stand myself. Like, if my employer put me in a position where I wasn't having an opportunity to learn, I feel like I would have to come home and do more coding at home because I have an itch that needs to be scratched, and that's the way it's going to happen. Like, I'm going to do it one way or another. It's just a question of where and when. So, and I think that's kind of a good way of going through and doing it. Yeah, natural cause. I completely agree. It is really good to let people fail, and it's hard because oftentimes people come to me for help, and there's a balancing act between how much do you tell them and how much do you let them struggle a little bit. Yeah, that's it. I don't have the time to do my own things because of the job. Yeah, and there is, like I said, there is that kind of question, and sometimes, especially if you've been there for a while and you've got a decent level of influence, sometimes you can work on changing the job, right? Sometimes there's an opportunity if people are open to change and advancement of saying, hey, we lack some expertise of knowing what we need to be doing. Oh, dang. 240 hours a month here. The money is great. I mean, that is something. I was talking to a former mentor of mine, and he was lamenting his current employer, but he also told me what he was going to make. And he's like, so there's a balancing act to be had there because he didn't really like the work that he was doing, but he really loved the pay. So sometimes you gotta pick what matters more to you, time or money. But yeah, so again, if there's influence there may be an opportunity to say, hey, let's see about getting somebody in who maybe can fill some of these gaps, whether that's a consultant, maybe it's there's an opportunity to hire an architect or similar to come in to kind of help guide some of that, again, without knowing the exact situation. just ideas to kind of throw it out there of, or even trying to hire another senior level engineer, just so that, again, even if it's at the same level as you, that's often good enough. Again, it depends on the person, but if you can get somebody where both people can kind of build off of each other, there's growth that can happen even without kind of the, you know, the senior junior level relationship. If it's two seniors or two juniors, they can help bring things up. We have an architect that works 4 hours a week. Furry, based upon the hours you said above, that does not seem like a fair split. And we only have mid-level developers and juniors. Yeah, that does seem to indicate that they're, like that is a problematic area. Like, I've gone in and helped companies before where that was a situation that they had where they were lacking in expertise, and and sometimes, like, if management's open to it, saying, hey, we could really use training, right? Because oftentimes it's cheaper to pay for training for a team than to replace a team. Like that, and some managers are easily on board with that, to say, you know what, we've got people, we've got a good cultural fit, they're working together well, they just need to know more about what they're doing, and they need to be able to move quick. Because the problem with the technology industry is things advance, and people who don't update their skills tend to fall off the back. Now, things like finance tend to be slower moving areas of tech. I will say that. Things like government, finance, they tend to lag behind by several years, just due to the nature of bleeding edge is scary to them because they've got too much on the line. I get it. That makes sense. So some places are a little more eager than others. Yeah. Things of that nature falling behind. Yeah. And again, it makes sense. Like, I get it. Like, especially if they're C#.net, I'm guessing that they probably won't update to any version of .net that's not an LTS. They're probably not going to update to the latest LTS right away. They may wait for the extra year and end up being 5 years functionally behind the release by the time they update, just because they want to make sure that all the bugs are worked out and that they aren't getting anything new. Like, I've seen companies that have a high liability do that. One of the things that you can push for in those situations, though, is trying to build confidence in the release. 15 years old, dang. That's longer than I've been doing this. But one of the things that you can try to do is push for confidence in the software in terms of quality, so that there aren't bugs moving out the door, right? Like, oftentimes when people move slow, it's because they've gotten burned by moving fast, and so they think the solution is to slow down. And they're not completely wrong, but if you just slow down without fixing any of the quality gate problems that let you get burned in the first place, all you've done is delay until you get burned the next time. And that doesn't make it better, right? Like, you have to actually fix the underlying problem. So things like the testing methodology here, and again, my perspective is people will put these in buckets. I think it's a gradient, and it's not easy to say, well, this is a unit test and this isn't. Like, people will put up firm rules. It's like, nah, like, it goes through here. There's a wonderful saying that everybody has a test environment. Some people are just fortunate enough to also have a separate production environment, right? Like, your stuff gets tested when you ship it, one way or the other. Like, let's see. I gave some ideas to implement SignalR, to implement some things in a web app, and it didn't go my way. Yeah. Yeah, dang, that is a lot of projects. Natural Cause. 300 projects all the way up to Net 8. Dang. Yeah. There is, for anybody who's thinking of doing it, did you use the .NET Updater to do any of it? Or Upgrade Assistant, if I can remember the thing. This is like, for anybody looking at this is like a 60% solution
right? It's not going to do all your work for you, but it'll get a lot of the easy things, and then you have to go through and fix the rest. I tried to use it, but it didn't work. Yeah, well, I think that's the thing is some people expect it to actually like do the work. It does. It's got some really fancy replacements, and it falls over in a lot of areas. So all the controllers, yeah, and that there's several areas around it where it's not great, where it's faster to do things by hand or similar. So yeah, I usually tell people it's worth giving it a try because sometimes it can save a decent amount of work, and other times it just won't do a lot of stuff. Yeah, I think that's probably where I would push, right? Like, based on what you told me, I'm guessing, at least for you, the next stage is probably figuring out kind of full project, new project management. Oh, yeah, no, don't apologize. I love rabbit trailing on this kind of stuff. I think being able to go through and say, being able to stand up a new project and get things rolling end to end, and have that kind of full application lifecycle is I'm guessing kind of where you're at and what would kind of help you move to that next level of how to do it well, right? Yeah, but again, I love questions like this. I need to find a way to put one of the bots in my stream that just tells people that it's okay to ask questions. Everybody apologizes for asking questions. I love questions. Let me rephrase. I'm very happy to rabbit trail on questions, especially if they involve software development, .NET, anything related in that vicinity. We're good. Or my addiction to Mountain Dew. However that goes. Okay, I think this was the exact same change, only into checkboxes. So all of this for a 2-line change. What did you have for breakfast? See, that's a trick question. This is going to come with some backlash, I'm sure. But many days I end up skipping breakfast and going straight to either like lunch or brunch. Like sometimes I'll just eat a slightly earlier lunch. Sometimes people call it brunch, and that kind of thing. Yeah, Izzy, I like your question there, which I assume is directed at Furry. Is the tooling that you end up using? One thing to keep in mind is some companies you get pigeonholed into using less popular tools. I'll put it that way, right? Like, if somebody's going to pick something, especially in like the .NET ecosystem, I'm going to say look into what the big players in .NET are using, which is going to be a lot of GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps, and related stuff. I think I'm only a CRUD dev. See, I don't know. Like, I am not a great web developer, but I work at a company where we have lots of great web developers. I do a lot of back-end stuff, desktop stuff, mobile stuff, and it's a little bit different. But I would say looking to try to do things where you are where you're working in technologies and tools that are more popular makes you more marketable. Some companies that, they've bought into insert company's tool chain here, right? And that could be fine, but in some ways I think it limits people when you do that, because it doesn't give them something that's very marketable. It means you're in a little more of a niche situation. There's not as much tooling, documentation, that kind of thing that's out there. So it can kind of fluctuate a little bit. Sorry. I may detour and head a different direction on my stream here in just a second.
Yeah, and I think what I would say is for companies that feel stuck in the past, I'd be always interested to know what their plans and their migration paths are forward, right? Like if they are, thank you, Natural Cause. If the company is on older tech, that doesn't bother me if they've got if they are like actively moving forward. Like I get it. Some companies have massive code bases and it's not easy to just like roll forward. Like for me, I rev my TFM and my CS project and I moved to Net 9. Great. Right. But some companies, that's a much bigger lift and it's not as simple. And so I think what I would be looking for is less about what they're on and what their culture around growth is, right? Do they value learning and training? Do they value moving forward? Because it's one thing to have old tech, but it's another thing to think that that's good, right? This is because I've again being kind of in a consulting gig, I get to see a lot of different companies and how they do it, and I've seen some companies where they've got old tech and they think it's great. It's like, you do realize you're about to be out of support, right? Like you can't call Microsoft for support after next month. And they go, oh, that's fine. Really? Like, aren't you worried that, something's like, there's going to be like, you're not getting security patches anymore, that you're going to start running into problems where there are security vulnerabilities and no patches coming. That is bad. Like, so if it's that kind of culture, that I would stay away from. But if it's one of the ones where they go, hey, we've got a lot of old code, we've got stuff that we're working on, we've got this thing here, we're hoping to sunset it in the next several years. We're building this newer thing here that we're hoping to replace it with, but it's it's a big migration and going forward. Like that I'd love to hear. I also love to hear when people go, yeah, we really value learning and training, and we like to invest in people. If the company has any sort of like learning plans or training plans, like sometimes people will clump it around like, hey, we love sending our people to conferences because they get to learn latest stuff, like those types of things. Those are green lights for me, right? Because it shows that even if they've got old stuff, they value people moving forward. And more importantly, they value their people moving forward, which will bring their tech forward with it, right? Yes, you may have older stuff that's harder to maintain, and some of it's not worth updating, right? Like if it's old, it works. It's not forward facing. There's not a lot of attack vectors into it. Maybe it can sit on old tech for a while. Like that's kind of okay, right? At some point that maintenance cost becomes a question, but like there's no perfect silver bullets. Ooh, that's a good one. Natural Cause. Yeah, technical debt is code that makes money. Sometimes the cost of modernizing outweighs the cost of just keeping it working on things. That is a good point. I think I'm searching for someone to teach me and things like that. Is that okay even when you're experienced? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think all that changes as you get more experienced is the type of stuff that you need teaching changes, right? Just like any field that has a deep amount of learning that can be done. What you are interested in learning, like we have juniors come in and oftentimes I'm teaching very simple things. I'm teaching about basic code structure and how we name things well, and here's how we structure our tests, and here's how we lay out our code to make it easily testable, and here's how we lay out our projects, and here's the tooling that we like to use, and all these types of things. And as somebody starts to move on, we get into more advanced concepts of, okay, here's how threading and async and await works, and here's how you can take your code from just working to working well. And then you get beyond that and it starts to become into, okay, design patterns and how do we get all of these things put together. And we start talking about deployments and cloud-based stuff and Kubernetes and pipelines and all the extra infrastructure stuff, and infrastructure as code. And that kind of ends up building onto it as well. And then you move further along and you realize that code is easy and people are hard. And then, like, I think in some ways, like, I've got multiple mentors right now that I lean on, but a lot of I'm leaning on not always for technical support, but more or less, like, I think I've reached a point in my career where the coding part is typically easy, and the people part is hard, and that's where everything starts going crazy. I love everything from naming to service layer to repository pattern, all that, but I learned all of it without any direction. I mean, that's pretty good though. Like, being able to go through and learn that kind of stuff. If you are interested, and this may be a little bit, sorry, while I'm plugging stuff, I might as well continue. If you get your stuff down into like the nitty gritty, dirty C# stuff, this is you'll note. Hi, I'm biased, right? Like, I may have had something to do with this, right? So yeah. So, but this is a good thing. But even this, right? Like, being involved in, so I was officially a technical editor on it. But even being involved in that, like, I learned something new about C# just earlier today. Like, there's stuff about the language that I didn't know. Now, admittedly, I got into some weeds with com interrupt and being able to pass values by ref without using the ref keyword, and I went, that's cool. I won't necessarily say wrote a book. Mark Michaelis gets the credit for the vast majority of the authorship. I was a technical editor on editions 10, 11, 12, I think. So yeah. So am I biased? Absolutely. Like, there's a print copy if you want to, if you like paper, but the digital copy has the exact same stuff as what's in the paper. So, right? If you're cool with digital, website, right? If you like paper, then you got to actually order a copy. But yeah, and we're working on getting another or a bit of content updated for the latest C# 13 as well. The hard part is Microsoft has blurred the line between C# language and .NET framework, and so we have a lot of debates about should that be in the book or not. Like, is that language or is that framework? Because the moment you dive into framework, that's a rabbit hole with a lot of stuff. So this tries to be fairly focused on language, but you gotta bring the framework in somewhere. So it's yeah, we argue about it. Yeah, but I will say this, Furry, it is what you're doing now of not being okay with it, I think is a very good first step. Right? Like, one of the hardest things for me to deal with is people that don't want to improve. Right? Like I said earlier, one of my interview questions of asking people how do you learn best is oftentimes trying to drive at that point of, does this person actually like to improve, or are they fine with good enough, right? Like, so at a certain point, like when you're writing code, it has to be good enough. You have to ship. Like, if you don't ship it, it doesn't matter. So, but I find it difficult to deal with people that are comfortable with saying, oh yeah, my skills are good enough, I don't need to do anymore. It's like, really? Like, I feel like there's always more to learn. Did you have a point in your career that you had nothing to learn from your colleagues and leaders? So I can think of 2 points that I will mention, and I will preface this with, these were very specific to me. So your situation may be different. Any similarities are circumstantial. So at one point in my career, I was a junior developer. The company I was working for was redoing their pricing model, and consequently, they were moving from getting money in one big lump sum to a subscription model, which meant that they were about to be short on a lot of capital, and so they laid people off. And me and my entire team got laid off, which was disappointing. Especially since my team lead had been a mentor for me for several years, which that part sucked the most. I think of the entire layoff, that part I think I hated the most. But I the job that I took after it, I think I lasted 7 business days before I quit. And a lot of it came down to, and there were red flags all over the place, but I realized very quickly when I got in there that there was nothing I could learn there, that I was going to be the guy in the room who knew the most, who didn't have any authority to make changes. And I immediately I immediately started looking for another job and just happened to land one very quickly. So that was the only reason it only lasted 7 days. It is because I had already been looking for a job, and so I just kind of started that back up right away and found another one and pursued it, and it ended up being a really great job. There was another company that I was at, and I had been there for I think like 3.5, 4 years. I think is about what it was, and the company was great. Arguably one of the best company cultures I've ever worked for. The people were nice, like everyone got along. The team I was on was really good. It was actually the one that I alluded to earlier where there wasn't necessarily an architect above me, but me and the team lead were fairly comparable in skill, and so we would build on each other. And we had a nice relationship where we'd constantly push each other to be better. I after 3 or 4 years, there was nothing wrong with the company, but it was a product-based company and I was getting bored. And when the opportunity came along to go work for the current company Intelitech that I'm at, where it was a consulting gig where it was going to be a lot of different projects, there was always change, it was expected to be a more fast-paced environment, I took it mostly because I was like, you know what? I really like the company I'm at, but this other company has a lot more opportunities available to me. And so I jumped on it mostly for that regard. I don't necessarily know if I would say there was nothing more I could learn, because me and my colleague there definitely built off of each other, and I'm sure I could have still learned things from him. But I think the opportunities afforded me here at Intelitech were that much better that I feel like I learned a lot more here, and it was worth it. Yeah. Oh, no problem. I'll pause for a moment. I gotta catch up on chat. Yeah, Izzy, and I can totally get it, right? Like sometimes switching jobs is the right choice, but I do also, like, depending on where somebody's at, not everybody necessarily is good opportunities to switch. Like I always hesitate to tell somebody to change jobs, especially if it's not necessarily like an actively bad situation. But if they're not in a great situation, it's always good to look. Always good to look. Yeah, let's see. I had a job where I had to fix a perf issue, and one of the things I did was rip out Microsoft Web Matrix.data. Ooh, man, that's an old one. Put in Dapper, took a 2-minute app start time to 7 seconds, and the architect replied to my change said, "This is not a find a Microsoft solution." Oh, that's horrible. That is horrible. I kind of think like Microsoft sometimes gets a rap with stuff like that, and I think they've gotten better about being more friendly to more areas. They've fluctuated a little bit, but find a Microsoft solution. Like not all of Microsoft's solutions are from internal. Yeah.
He refused to have a discussion. Oh, see, that's always a scary thing for me. One of the clients I was at not that long ago, there was an architect on there. They had an in-house architect. I was brought in because they were short on manpower and a little bit on expertise. Like, the architect was good. He knew things I didn't. I knew things he didn't, and so we'd play off each other a little bit. But I was largely brought in as a dev to work under him, and there was a handful of things that he did where I'm like, I don't like this, but he was very good at being willing to sit down and have conversations and discussions. So even on the stuff that we disagreed on, we could sit down, have a discussion, and we would come away both being okay with the solution. Like, we would, oh dang, Furry, that is way too late. But yeah, having people that are not willing to have discussions can be a little problematic at times. Oh, actually, you know what? Okay. While I'm plugging stuff, I'm on a roll. Let me find. I got a YouTube playlist here that people might find helpful. Let's see here. Okay, is this the link? I think this is the link. All right, 1 second. I gotta check and make sure this is the right link before I paste it. Yeah, this is the right link. Okay, so yeah, and honestly, that attitude thing becomes problematic. So this was a thing I got put onto by a colleague. The idea here is or I should say, the author here hypothesizes that there are 6 types of working geniuses, and of these kind of areas, he posits that people have 2 that they're geniuses at, 2 that they have competency in, and 2 that are frustration areas. And I will say, at least for me, I agree with his hypothesis. I fit into those buckets, right? There were 2 that I landed on that I went, yep, those 2 I love doing. I feel like I'm great at those. 2 that I'm willing to do, and 2 that I go, oh, please don't make me do it. And it was worth noting, like, I like the way he laid it out, because it kind of highlighted the idea that it didn't really matter the industry or the job, as much as the environment and the type of work in a lot of cases, right? So sometimes it's changing jobs. Sometimes it might be changing roles. And yeah, it absolutely, a lot of the stuff like that can certainly change from country to country. Like, and that's the other thing where I know like, where I work, it's an at-will employment. I can turn in my resignation tomorrow, and if I have an offer, start a new job the next day, right? Some places, like, there's months lead time. Like, that is not a thing you can do. And so it's always an interesting situation. Yeah. Oh, see, Izzy, that's kind of cool. Being able to, 4-week forced holiday sounds glorious to me. That sounds amazing. But yeah, being able to sit down, go through discussions and questions, like, I love the people that I work with right now, because they are not afraid to push back on code reviews and challenge, have questions, right? Like, sometimes they start with the premise of Kevin's right, and so they're more asking for clarification, but I love it when they push back and go, wait, are you sure that's right? I don't know that you're right, Kevin. This is something that I think you might be wrong on. Like, I love that. One, it means that they've actually thought it through rather than just blindly taking what I said. Yeah. So for I think it. So again, I'm an outsider without a lot of information. So take everything I'm saying with a big grain of salt. Yeah,
it might be worth going through that YouTube playlist. If you have some influence to be able to do some changes, it might be worth identifying for yourself what your ideal role would look like and what you would want things to be, right? Because if you know where you want to go, or where you think things should need to go, like it could be a new job, but maybe it's an update to your current role, or maybe it's additional training or similar, to be able to get you where you're looking to go. Again, I think you're doing the right thing by wanting it to be better, because I think that is really step one, because that's the hardest part in all of this, is somebody actually wanting to improve and get better. Yeah, I just want to use the new stack and improve the software. Yeah, and I think that it may be worth, like, especially in a lot of those situations, one of the areas I've had success is putting it in terms of dollars for the company, right? Because sometimes latest stuff is like, well, what benefit are we going to gain, right? Yeah, exactly what Izzy's positing. Write them up as business cases. Yeah, and then ballpark timescales to be able to implement. I think that is an excellent way to go, because again, if you can put it in terms of dollars, most managers want like they're very okay with improvements, especially if there's a return on investment, right? If there's an easy advancement forward, it's not hard to accept. It does it makes it a lot easier to say, hey, oh, so if we do this, what are the benefits, right? And sometimes that requires thinking through what's most important to the company, right? Like .NET upgrades, it's usually easy to point at a lot of performance benchmarks, because Microsoft will put out stuff showing how much faster the latest version of .NET is, right? How many things are cooler. Like .NET 9 dropped, and their tiered garbage collector, there's a lot of people that started posting, hey, we saw these kind of performance metrics going through and doing it. But if performance isn't something that is valuable, like if nobody's complaining about the performance of the application or how long things are taking, that may not be a compelling use case, right? But if it's, hey, if we do this, this will help us be able to fix your bugs or implement features faster, that can sometimes be a very compelling use case of, hey, we need, some amount of dev time to do this upgrade. That way we can be able to leverage latest stuff. And the other thing too is it may be worth looking at seeing what things you can do internally, even if it's targeting an older framework. Sometimes just getting yourself to using the newer tooling. We overwork ourselves here a lot. And that comment there, Furry, makes me wonder if man hours might be a significant cost to the company. And so maybe phrasing things in terms of, hey, if we do this, it will reduce the number of man hours we have to spend doing X, Y, and Z, right? If some all the time tasks we have that don't match my tasks, that's why. Ooh, yeah, that sounds kind of like a yucky situation. Yeah. Yeah, I think, especially because you listed how many hours you were working per month in there, it may be worth looking at advancements in areas that might improve automation. Like that might be an easy way of pushing things forward. Yeah. It's a month and a half in extra hours. Dang nabbit. I will say though, I worked for a client in not too distant of the past where cost and time were not the metrics that they cared about, and it was a very weird situation, right? Normally I work for companies where if you say, hey, this is gonna like increase your cost by 200%, they freak out. This client was, oh, that's fine. I'm like, what? It was it made it very hard. Yeah, here it's hard for people to get a job. That's why we work. Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, I know where I'm at and where other people are. The ability to change jobs is not nearly as fluid. Like, it's very fluid where I am, but that is not true in the entire world. Like, there's one client I work for, I know they say it takes them like 6 months to be able to bring someone on, and there's time delays there because of various laws and cultural things of being able to switch stuff around. So it's like it takes a long time if somebody says they're going to change a job, and it's not something that happens very often, which is like, it's weird for people in America to think of it that way, because a lot of developers here, the average tenure is like 3 to 4 years at a company, and then they switch, either because they're bored, they get a better offer, better pay, whatever, and they up and go because it's very easy here and very fluid. But yeah, it could be that trying to shift some of the culture towards working more efficiently, and that might be something worth looking into, depending on where you're at. Like, at least a lot of the managers that I've worked with are usually very receptive if somebody comes with suggestions of, hey, I think we could be doing this better, and here's some ideas I had. Like, that is a lot of the managers I've worked with are very receptive to that, right? Of, hey, I think we could do better, and here and have some suggestions of what that could look like. I think that goes a long way. Yeah. But I think the advice is great. Well, I try. Like I said, I don't have a lot of experience dealing with job markets outside of the U.S. So I will put it that way. So a lot of what I say is going to be with that background in mind, and I only have kind of very indirect knowledge of a little bit of stuff in the UK and a little bit of stuff in Europe and a little bit of stuff in India, and that's kind of indirect from talking to people, and that's the sum total of my experience. Okay. Sorry, we got PRs. We got 2 PRs in, and I think that gets those ones caught up. And then I think the last thing I wanted to look at here, worked with an Ireland team for 3 months and told them the stats of the project that we worked on here at my company. It was hilarious, their reaction. I believe it. Ironically, I actually was doing some work for a place out of Ireland several months ago. It's one of the best/worst things about the current company is I tend to get all kinds of wacky projects. Because on a year I had done 1,100 tasks. Holy cow! That is an insane number of tasks, and obviously, like, I need to be careful because it does depend. Different teams break tasks down differently. So a task from Team A doesn't necessarily equal a task on Team B. But 1,100 of anything is still a pretty big number. Like, you figure that's what? Assuming you work every day of the year, that's 3 or 4 a day. That's still a lot. Number of tasks in second place. I mean, I was on so the team that I'm working on now, we do 2-week sprints, and I was on a sprint planning call earlier, and I reported that I had done 0.5 tasks in 2 weeks. Now, admittedly, my job is not a dev on the team. I'm playing the architect role, so my job is not necessarily to be hands on the keyboard in a lot of cases. So me only doing half of a task in a 2-week period, it isn't unexpected. But it also, like, even the devs on the team, I think the fast ones were doing, like, I think they did 6 stories, I think is what it was, maybe on average. But again, we got to be careful on doing it because size of those things. I got a pat on my shoulder. Yeah. That a pat on the shoulder feels like a very underwhelming amount of mostly bugs. See, 1,100 bugs, that's a ton. That is a lot. I'd be curious, Fury, are the bugs... The fact that there's 1,100 bugs also, or, you know, bug/improvements on there, does make me wonder a little bit if the quality gates on the software may not be high enough, if that many bugs are making it through. 90% of the bugs. Still, though, that means that there's, what, 900 and a bit bugs in there? Because it a large number of bugs could mean that the software gates are inefficient, or it could mean that there weren't, didn't have a QA team. Okay, I was going to say the other case where I see lots of bugs is teams that didn't previously have quality gates, right? Like, I see a lot of, like, legacy stuff and similar where it's like there's all these bugs. It's like, well, how did they get out that much? And kind of more modern stuff would be like, well, clearly you didn't have enough tests on shipping. It's like, well, this is legacy stuff. Well, they built this back when that wasn't really the life cycle management side of things. So I've seen it both ways. So if there was no QA or testing being done prior, that okay, at least prior. Do you see a lot of repeat bugs, like bug gets squashed, bug comes back later? You started the unit testing. So that's the level. So there were no gates. Got it. Cockroach bugs. I hadn't heard that term before, Natural Cost, but I think I might need to steal that. That's pretty good. Yeah, I think. Oh, okay. Well, hang on. So while I'm in plugging stuff, I need to actually write an updated blog post too, because I wrote these blog posts, and you might read them and immediately assume that I like mocks. And at the time I wrote them, I really did. But I've like, my perception of mocks is slowly switched. There's kind of a growth ladder that I see for a lot of people when it comes to tests. Is you start at the bottom rung, which is we have no tests, and that's not a good place to stay. And then you step up one level and go, okay, now we're writing tests. And usually that first rung is one of the hardest because your code is likely not set up to be very testable. And so you get into this situation where it's like, okay, how do we get our code into a testable state, right? And that's usually just that alone is usually a big leap, right? And there's lots of videos and whatnot on refactoring, test-driven, blah, 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 blah. But regardless, just trying to get your code to be more testable is usually that first rung of difficulty. And then as part of that, usually you start getting into like dependency injection, inversion of control, separation of concerns, blah, blah, blah. And people discover, like in .NET, interfaces. And they're like, okay, we do interfaces. And with our university students, we tell them, okay, write a test double to go behind the interface. And we make them do that. And then if we're nice to them, then we'll show them mocks. And then I will tell them that mocks suck. Because, like,
because I oftentimes I see people get to that stage where they start using mocks and they think mocks are the best, and that's where they stop climbing the testing ladder. It's like, oh, you only got halfway up. You got to keep going, because I was very proud of a student recently because he quoted me in his interview. The problem with mocks is it's like putting a lot of couplers in a pipe, right? If you're trying to build a pipe to funnel some water around, if you put a lot of couplers in it, where's the pipe going to leak? Right at the couplers. And so people who always just like drop in the interface and do a mock, I usually love to ask the question, okay, where do your bugs come from? And I was like, you've got good test coverage and you've got mocks. Where are your bugs coming from? And hopefully they've gotten far enough along to realize, oh, the bugs come in because my mocks don't always behave like the real implementation that my code is using. That's where the bugs creep in. It's like a coupler, right? I can test that small section of the code. I can test this small section of the code, but I've got this coupler in the middle that's the mock, and it's like, it's probably fine. But it's only as good as I can make it. And it's hard. It's hard to get it right. And one of the things that I've adopted, and some people hate me for it, is I try to treat mocks as a necessary evil, right? Because you can't test the whole software solution all at once. That's just like, that's a full end-to-end test. And some stuff you can do, but oftentimes that's too much, right? You got to put in separations here and there and somewhere. But you want to put in as few as you need to give yourself confidence that the software is working. Because every time you put in something that's a little bit different, you're now different from prod, and things don't work quite right. And so it becomes a very interesting problem to be able to solve. And so a simulator is oftentimes my new go-to solution to try to have something that actually is the real thing, that I can verify works like the real thing, so that I don't get bit nearly as much by that mocking problem of my mock doesn't match the real behavior, therefore the bugs snuck in, right? Yeah. Yeah, natural cause. I hate mocks, but I hate testing against external dependencies like the database even more. Right. Like, that's exactly right. Like, you can't do everything. You have to at some layers put things in, and you still need to you need a combination of tests to give, or I should say, I'll put it this way. I like to have a good combination of tests to make sure that I'm confident my software is working, right? The moment I have confidence that my software works when my tests pass, that's when I have enough, right? That's when I'm happiest. If I'm willing to hit the release to prod because my tests went green, that's when I know I have enough tests, right? Now, that's a very subjective scale, right? But it's the target I like going for. Yeah, and let's see. First test to automate is using the UI remotely. Then you know you've not broken the end user for any changes. Yeah, and the hard part is the further up the stack you get, the higher the cost of the test, right? The more brittle it gets. Every little change causes something different. It's like, ugh. But you need some of those. Like, you need something that touches the front end. Otherwise, you can break it. But maybe there's a low cost to breaking the front end. Maybe. But yeah, doing tests for software that's been in prod for 15 years, yeah, it is very difficult. And TDD, I don't know, for somebody who's doing bug fixing, TDD may not be the right solution if the code that you're working on wasn't set up to be testable in the first place. There is oftentimes a lot of there's kind of some refactoring strategies around addressing that to try to segment it off. What's that book? Crap. I borrowed a book from a colleague at one point that had a really great example in it, and I am blanking on the name of it. It'll come to me later, and I will shout it out. But going through and doing the test, I think the important thing to remember, there was let me grab it. I have a video on
TDD, and I think it makes it a little better because a developer I respect a great deal called it test-driven design, not test-driven development, and I really like that better. Is his argument was the test is there to verify that the design is correct, right? And again, this assumes a particular application lifestyle pattern that may not be true for everybody, but it works really well, right? If the test is designed to verify that your design is right. Now, if you're bug fixing, there's not really a design to test, so it's like you're more around writing the test to verify that the bug doesn't regress, right? Oftentimes the test is, here's the bug, I write a test that replicates the failed state, I fix the code, test goes from red to green, and now I've got a test to make sure that that bug doesn't regress any further. Let's see, I worked on a project where the developers made almost every method static, everything was static. We had to build a system on the side into calling this code base. So we used interfaces to abstract it away. So we had classes just called static messes. We could unit test all our code. Yeah, and that is one strategy. Depending on what the statics do, though, like if the static methods are pure, meaning there's not observable side effects, I oftentimes don't even mock them away. I leave them in place and test with the real stuff. But again, it depends. If they aren't pure and they're like doing database stuff or whatever, it's like, oh, okay, yuck. Now we have a major problem. Yeah, and then mutation testing is very interesting. I've got a colleague that's been poking at different tools for doing it. It's really, it's a very interesting case. But again, I would put that fairly high up my testing ladder. Like, getting people to write test is the hard step one, right? And then working their way through interfaces, mocks, and structuring that is kind of layers 2 and 3 of getting all the way up there. Making the test better with something like auto mockers so that you can decouple from your constructors and run there. Realizing that you shouldn't use mocks everywhere is kind of another level. And then you get into the polyglot level testing where it's like, okay, now I'm not just thinking about how do I write my unit test, but I'm trying to think about, should this be an integration test or a UI test or a mutation test, or how am I going to glue all of these tests together to make sure that I've got good protection, right? And being able to find those blind spots, because that is the hard part. Sorry, I was searching for this. Let's see. There is... Yeah, so this was... So this is a user group talk that I did with my colleague Artem. And then if you want, I followed it up with, because during the live stream or the user group, we only were able to get to so many questions. And so I picked up a couple extra questions on my live stream, I think a day or two later. And that's the second link. There's the Q&A from it. Which again, I think the point that Artem and I were trying to drive at is basically trying to get people to kind of work their way to the next level of testing, because that's an area to improve quality, and it's an area that has diminishing returns. Like, that's the other thing people always have to remember is testing has diminishing returns. So you can spend as much time and money as you want making sure stuff is really well tested. But at the end of the day, I usually, like, my gold standard is if I am confident I can release to production based on my test passing, that's how I know I'm good enough, right? That's my gold standard. And oftentimes, I don't get my gold standard. Like, it's usually something something that matters. Oh boy, what do you think is the most important thing for getting a job overseas? Ooh, I may not be the right I don't have a lot of experience in that, so I don't know if I would be the right thing. What I would be looking for most is communication, because like I don't have a lot of experience overseas, but I do have a lot of experience with remote teams, and that is my big thing would be how well does the communication go, because it is really hard to like when you are working remote, it is significantly harder than when you can actually sit down with people. And I work remote from like my home office versus like driving into my real office usually a few times a week, and there is a noticeable difference where there are times where it is so much easier if people are in person, and we work around it with calls and whatnot, but I can only get away with it because I have a team that is good with communication. If I had a team that was bad with communication, it would be a nightmare. So I would be looking for really strong communication skills. Would be more valuable to me than almost anything else. Okay. Did I put these other links in? I think I did. Yeah, I put the other links in for the unit testing stuff. Okay, 5.2 release stuff. I don't know. Okay, so for starters, we're gonna do this. We're gonna go back to here. I think we're gonna just pop a new milestone, because 5.3.0. As you can see, this is all it takes. And then I think what I'm gonna do is, are there any of these? This is a PR, so we keep that. This is a PR, we keep that. Which is this link? It fixes 3430. Is 3430 in here? No. So, but I think we're gonna punt these. I want to look at that colors one. Move those ones out. Yeah, Izzy, I completely agree. Like there is something to be said. I usually joke with people that conversations go a lot differently when people are within slapping distance. So much easier. Oh yeah, this is one that's worth looking at, because this one is the obsolete brushes were a miss somewhere. Okay, so this one, as you can see, June 11th. So this one should be fixed. Yeah, there's a handful of these that are very much not quite right. And I think some of these were due to a collapse of some of the brushes. Yeah, and this is where some of these, like, there's a handful of these, like, I think the obsolete brushes, like, there's going to be a straight breaking change at some point. And in a lot of ways, we're going to start moving towards trying to line up with the spec a little bit better, because the naming changed with Material Design 3, and we don't have a good way of separating that naming out. So I think the thing is going to be, yeah, I think the thing is going to be a swap through here to be able to change it. Yeah. There is also something I've been looking at
I really like the way Avalonia did their theming, and I may poach a little bit of it. It's the problem with me playing with Avalonia is I've started to like it a little bit. Okay. One thing I wanted to look at. So sorry, it's gonna be a complete deviation of what we were doing, but there was a bug that came up. Pop this out. Open in full view. Yeah, that'll work. This guy here. So, complete deviation for people who haven't seen it before. Hello pack. Something that I am very involved in. Specifically, this bug here. At some point, we need a migration wizard for WPF to Avalonia. So, depends on how deep your company's pockets are. If thousands of dollars aren't a scary dollar sign to people, you can get it. Avalonia has their, what do they call it? XBF. It's how they stay in business. Let's put it that way. If all you want, XPF, yeah. If all you want is to take your WPF apps to multi-platform, and you're willing to pay Avalonia some money, you can do it real easy. So as long as your WPF apps aren't leveraging anything that, I'm trying to remember the exact restrictions on it. They ported WPF cross-platform is what they did. Yeah, some money. It's not cheap. It is not cheap. This is how Avalonia stays in business. So it's let's see. Does this get me over to a pricing page? Try now for free. Where's the bloody pricing? This is one of the scary ones. When they don't list the pricing in an easy to find place, that's how you know it's going to be expensive. Yeah, there's your pricing. Here. We've got a lot of people in euros. So, just to be clear, not cheap. But if you've got a big WPF investment and you want to go to Avalonia, right? Like, that's like, they also, there's some cool videos of, I think this is this the, they've got a YouTube video, right? This is if you want to do the code changes yourself, but they've got a YouTube video they did, and it's one of these ones in here where they demo upgrading a WPF app over to Avalonia using XBF, and I think it took them, I don't know, 2 minutes. And I think it was IL Spy that they did. So it's, yeah, there are a handful of limitations. If you're using any of the 3D APIs in WPF, because those are like implemented with DirectX shaders, like that, there's just not a direct equivalent. Right? Like, because this is the two things that Avalonia charges for: enterprise support and XBF, right? That's what they charge for. If you don't need those things, it's free. Have fun. If you want those things, they charge a pretty penny, and that's how they stay in business, which I like, because I like them. I want them to stay in business, and I like that they give away the rest of the stuff. The other thing that is available is Islands. Let's see. There is a... where was the... It was like in their community Let me drop WPF off of here. They had maybe it's on the awesome list. They had something that was like the UWP XAML Islands, but for Avalonia, where you could go back and forth, right? To mix and match. Less than half of what we just threw in the bin because our PM was an idiot. Yeah. Yeah, and I will agree. Like, there are 3 competing technologies: Maui, Avalonia, and Uno. The only reason I would recommend Maui to somebody over Uno or Avalonia is if they said we have to have Microsoft backing. Like that's Maui's the only thing Maui has on the other 2. Everything else is I think Avalonia is my pick out of all of them. The big difference, Uno is frameworked a little more like Maui, where it is native look and feel, whereas Avalonia is common look and feel, right? So there's a logical separation there of kind of what you're going for. So you need to factor that in to your consideration. Because it's native look and feel, Uno gets the benefits and the curses of, like, if WinUI has a bug, because Uno is built on WinUI for their Windows head, they ingest that bug, but they also ingest the features. So it's a trade-off, right? Avalonia, it's Skia backed. So Skia is Google's rendering engine. And so they try to go low level and immediately just get a Skia surface and start painting everything themselves, which means the look that you get on one platform is very, very similar to another platform. And you're going to get that common look and feel, and it's all kind of in their control. And so there's, in my opinion, usually less surprise issues because it's all kind of one thing, right? There is a little bit of platform differences, but it's not nearly as big as the other one. So that's kind of the architectural difference between them. Yeah, the guys at Uno are really nice. Oh, gotta check. I'm not wearing my shirt. Sorry. I got to hang out with a couple of the Uno guys at the Build Conference this year. Yeah, absolutely great guys. Very nice. I think the real decision between Uno and Avalonia comes down to which of their 2 architecture paradigms makes most sense for what you're doing, right? Like, if having a native look and feel is very important to you on all platforms, you probably steer into Uno over Avalonia. There's a little bit of a thing there. Uno has also been killing it. They kicked out some really nice features for, what did they call it? Their new design surface thing. It's a weird cross between a WYSIWYG editor and a designer and like hot reload. I don't remember what they called it. The like hot preview or something of that nature. But yeah. But then the question of why WPF instead of WinForms? Yeah, so good question. WinForms came out first from Microsoft in 2002. Don't quote me on that. And arguably was one of the best UI frameworks that had come out on any platform at the time, and immediately got very, very popular. And at the time, I was doing a lot of WinForms development. WPF came out in 2005, and it was Microsoft's attempt at saying, okay, let's take some of our learning from WinForms, and if we were to do something new and better, what would we do if we could start over from the ground up? And this was done at a time where Microsoft had the ability to basically say, we're going to start over from scratch and do it from the ground up with all of our previous learnings. And WPF, I think, may have been the last time they actually hit the mark doing that. And I think they got lucky based on how well it did. So WinForms, you end up kind of either doing a lot of stuff in C#. The WYSIWYG designer is good, but it leaves a little bit to be desired. The big advantage of WPF is an XML-based layout, which feels very natural in a lot of ways. It's kind of the same reason why HTML is like the de facto web stuff, right? It feels natural to kind of lay things out in an XML-based structure. And WPF
fix some of the things that were challenging in WinForms. My favorite example is, at least back when WPF first came out, if you tried to put an image and text in a button, you had to drop down and start doing like some painting stuff. And that was a miserable nightmare. Whereas in WPF, you just put an image and some text inside of a button and you were done. It was like, oh, well, that's really easy, because WPF, it separates the look of a control from its behavior. And so because of that, you get all kinds of cool theming and that kind of stuff around it, which is really nice. Right? And so that kind of makes things feel a lot nicer, and how WPF got very popular because it could do that. It also worked really well for line of business apps. And so when enterprises picked it up, there was a lot of big money thrown around. And so it took off because of that as well, because it was easy to go from idea to fully running. And you didn't, and some things that were hard in WinForms were much easier in WPF without a lot of work, and you got a lot of it for free. And then every framework Microsoft produced after that, I would argue, did not usurp WPF, which is why it is still popular today. But yeah, DevExpress for your desktop apps. Yeah, and I think that's the other advantage of like WinForms or WPF, is because they've both been around for like 2+ decades at this point, there is a deep amount of third-party tooling and support for it all over the place, right? Avalonia has only been out, it feels like it's only really been like mainstreamy and usable for like 5 years, maybe. Not a huge amount of time. I looked at it several years ago when it first came out and was like, I don't know if I really want to switch. And then I looked at it this year and I was like, dear heavens, I love this. It's amazing. The amount that they got done is awesome. And I love the look and feel, the common look and feel. So I'm slightly biased, and I love the performance of it. It is screaming fast. Absolutely, like you press F5 and it just goes. It's amazing. But yeah, so it is one potential option to go to, but its limiting factor is because it is not built on the native stuff and is built on top of Skia, you have slightly limited. So you have, I'll put it this way: you have less third-party libraries and support that's out there for it, and you have to kind of work around for it. The other somewhat disadvantage of Avalonia is they are a cross-platform UI framework, not a cross-platform framework. That is an important distinction, right? They are a cross-platform UI framework and not a cross-platform framework. So a lot of times I'll see issues come up where people ask for, hey, I need a cross-platform API for doing like file sharing. Well, guess what? They don't have one, because that has nothing to do with UI. And the standard Avalonia answer is, you can go pull in any of the other libraries that do it. Go reference Maui, right? Because you can pull in the Maui Essentials into your Avalonia app and use it. Yeah, get out of here, Izzy. Have a good day. Thanks for hanging out. But you can pull in the Maui Essentials NuGet package inside an Avalonia app, which I am doing today on one of my projects, and you can leverage most of it. The big problem I have with it is the Maui ones and the Uno ones are typically the best written cross-platform libraries out there, and the Maui ones suck. Like the Maui Essentials library, I constantly am running into problems because they make assumptions that the only project type that's ever going to reference them is a Maui project. So hypothetically, you want to do file sharing. Anything inside of the Maui Essentials NuGet package that makes assumption on a Maui window will fail, because that is not how an Avalonia project is structured, and it doesn't work, and you end up having to beat it into submission, which I'm getting pretty good at doing. It's just annoying that I have to do it. So yeah, that's the only thing that I haven't been overly thrilled with is they do one thing and they do one thing well, which is great. Like, that's what a company should do. They should do their one thing and they should do it well. But there's not a wealth of stuff, and it's somewhat due to the their young age, because there are quite a few third parties that have full Avalonia support now, which is great. Like the framework, everything's there. It's awesome. You just might have to build some stuff yourself rather than expecting somebody else to provide it in some cases. And for me, I'm like, that's fine. I can, if it's not out there, I'll just build it myself. Not a big deal, right? For other people, it's a big deal. So do with that what you will. Okay, let me. Anyway, so what I was looking at though is this here. So we have an issue where someone had spun a brand new library and Velopack build is no worky. So we're going to take a quick gander at what's going on, because this shouldn't be a hard thing. And this is the whole reason this came up is because this is going to be an Uno project. So at least their example was an Uno one. So let's do an Uno project. Let's see. Close you. I don't need all this stuff open anymore. Okay. So because this is a new machine, I don't think I have any of the Uno stuff installed, which means I need their extension first, I think, if I remember correctly. Let's see. Getting started. Visual Studio 2022. Give me the WYSIX. Open. And again, no problem with Uno versus Avalonia. I think Uno is great. I think the decision really comes down to their fundamental architecture decisions and which one best aligns with what you want. That's kind of my... But as the guy who is literally building installer technologies for cross-platform apps, means I gotta build some cross-platform apps, which we shall do, and it will be glorious. Okay. Please close and restart target application, blah, 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 blah. Okay. New Visual Studio. Okay. Create new project. Now, there should be Uno templates, I believe. Yeah? Uno platform app. Let's build one of those. Let's not go into that directory. D:dev. Uno app 1 sounds great. Create. Okay. Don't remember that being a thing before, but okay, great. Maybe it was. Basically, you're winning if you're not using Maui. Yeah, like, there's been a handful of decisions that Maui, from a design perspective, that Maui has made that just baffle my mind. Like, Xamarin was decent. Xamarin Forms I mostly liked. Like, there was issues with it, and they fixed a lot of them in Maui, but then they made other decisions in Maui that made me scratch my head of, like, why? Why would you do something different? It's like they wanted to try to improve XAML, but rather than doing what Avalonia did and just trying to, like, incrementally build on what was good and already there, they went different directions, and I don't... Like, the order that properties get assigned is last in, and I'm like, what? Like, I realize from an implementation perspective that probably made it easier, but it means that your code has to be crappier? I'm like, no? Uh-oh. I guess I'm getting the defaults. That's probably okay, but I don't know what I just picked. So we'll see what's about to come out the door. And I do know that there's a handful of ex-Xamarin people working at Avalonia, which is kind of cool. So I usually tell people Avalonia is what Maui could have been. Okay. You might need to install some extra components. I don't really want to install any extra components. What do you think I need? It's going to be like the WASM workload or something. Thought I already had that extension. Oh, apparently we're installing. Okay. We're going.
So we'll let it go and do its thing. So the bug in question here, we'll just talk through what this is, right? So this particular person created what the description is a very standard Uno app, and we have some documentation out here if anybody wants to follow along at home, right, of building Uno apps and adding in the installer. And it's supposed to be easy. Right? And so it goes through and it produces out an installer, and it should work. The thing that's not covered here is there is a super secret project. And by super secret, I mean it's in a public open source repo, so it can't be that secret. But there is a package called Velopack Build. And the idea here is normally with Velopack, you have to run a .NET CLI to like produce the installers, right? Which is fine, but it's not the cool experience that I want it to be, right? I want Velopack to be you run a .NET publish and out comes the installer, no thinking, right? That's the experience I want, because it doesn't get any easier than that, right? Run the commands you're already running, and now an installer just magically appears and you're off to the races. So Velopack Build, what it does is it integrates into the MS Build build process to be able to generate those installers as you go. And that's the whole premise of it. But apparently it is not fully released. We have not documented it because we're not confident it's ready for release. So unfortunately, in this case, the solution here was uninstall the package, and then magically things worked. So there's issues here, and I'm surprised that these issues, like these ones here, are clearly coming from the Velopack build targets file. So something's gone wrong here, but I don't know what it is, and it's not the first time somebody's reported something with this. So we're gonna see if we can replicate, because that would be ideal. Okay, do you build now? I just need you to build and run. And if we need to, we'll dial down some of these targets, because I should be able to do, like, I don't think I have the WASM workload installed, but I've got the build must be stopped before the project can be closed. I'm not trying to close the project. Detected that active framework was changed. Okay. I'm confused, Microsoft. Are we building? Doing something. Yes, we are building. Oh, interesting. I do love that the default project template generates warnings. That always bothers me. And that to the list of things. Again, Uno, it gets the benefits and the drawbacks of building on top of the native stuff. And so, again, it depends. Like, and it's the same problem Maui has as well. Is because they build on top of the native stuff. So if the native stuff has a bug, they get a bug too. That's the way it goes. Okay, so that build and launched. Do you have an unpackaged option? You do. That's very nice. Let's make sure you launch. I would like to see it go. I will say this is something else that I think Avalonia can use, and why I've been working on building out my own .NET template for Avalonia is Uno's starting project. It just has a little bit more to it. Like, there's a text field. There's a second page. Like, they show you navigation. They show you some basic controls and implementation of it. It's like, Avalonia's starting project is Hello World. It's like, that's nice, but my opinion is it should have a little more to it, or at least have the option of showing a little more to it, right? So, yeah, like my project template kind of pulls in, like they show in their docs how to do dependency injection, but they don't add it to the template. I'm like, yeah, I kind of want that on all my apps. So my template is unapologetically opinionated. with all of my opinions. Okay, so next, let's start here. Sign in, register. Oh, interesting. Okay, do you have, let's start with this. Are there any updates that I should be aware of? You say no package is found. I mostly believe you. Okay, let's go grab Velopack. Okay, so in this case, what were the versions used? 942, 942. Okay. When was this released? November 15th. Okay, so it's not old. So we're going to grab this. And we can we probably don't need, so Velopack build takes a dependency on, oh, it doesn't. Oh, that's right. We intentionally broke the dependency between build and Velopack so they could rev independently. Never mind. I was going to say build should bring it in, but let's pull this guy in and see what is going on. Okay. So, according to the poster, they followed this kind of setup inside of their app. So we will do the same. So inside of our app, we do this maneuver. And that, in theory, should be all it takes. All right, so the idea here of the reason you need to do this is because Velopack has the ability to do updates and similar. And as part of doing the updates, your app may need to restart. And so you want these calls early in your startup, ideally at the beginning of your main method, because if your app needs to be doing an update, it may need to start and this may terminate. And you don't want that to be after it's spent a bunch of time doing stuff, right? So you want it early before you've done a lot of work. Okay. So now we got to see, hopefully this replicates the bug, because Velopack build is going to add in an extra target inside of the MS build stuff. So we'll see what comes out of here. Though I am curious, when I use Visual Studio 2022 publish, I'm curious what that sentence means. Is that the right-click publish? Is that .NET publish?
Might need to test both.
Might need to test both. There is a
Chance it's
kind of thinking it might be the right-click option here, right? This one. Thinking it might be that.
it's my theory.
Okay, so build succeeded. Let's go with publish here. Sounds like right-click publish. Unable to build an app package because the app manifest is invalid. Can I not do this and publish? Oh, no, publish is going to immediately push me to packaged. Ah. Correct the errors in the app manifest. Okay, what are the errors in the app manifest? I must be stupid because I don't see them. Yeah, sounds like right-click publish. I agree. I'm missing something here. The nice part is the Uno docs are pretty good, so we might check their docs out here real quick. Publishing, desktop, in the debugger. disappointing because I think that's what they were describing, but WinArm x86, because we have published profiles down here. What is the... I clearly haven't updated. This bug makes me need ice cream. And I can't blame you there. Let's just do this. If we go down to just that, that's going to get us just the TFM we care about. All right? So now I can't help but be on the right one. Ready to publish. We've got our choices. Let's do x64. Right? Publish. Because I have to believe it's something about what I've done in the Velopack build is not supported without specifying a target frame. You know, I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. This is literally the definition. Published target is not supported without specifying a target framework. I am noticing that now filled in. Maybe that made a difference. The extra slashes are also giving me pause as well. In theory, they shouldn't matter. I am also wondering because the errors here indicate that there might be an extra dependency here. ASMResolver.net. I don't think that's built in. I am wondering if this like markdig package, like there might be something extra here. We'll see if this guy works. An error encountered. 1.0 is not a valid version string. Okay. Is that what you fed in?
I assume so. Orange chocolate chip.
Oh, that sounds delectable. That sounds really good.
Where are you located, Natural Cause,
If you don't mind me asking.
because I don't think I have seen that flavor
Anywhere near me.
and I'm only pausing because my wife used to work in an ice cream parlor and so
She was somewhat familiar. Oh, New Zealand. Oh, dang it. Now I can't show this to my wife. She absolutely loves New Zealand. She got to live there for 9 months, I think it was. A bit of time just after college, and she absolutely fell in love with it. Well,
I'll save this for later. That looks very good. Just out of curiosity, do they have anything anywhere related to me? I'm gonna go out on a limb that the answer is no, but you know what? One can hope. Yeah, like around here we have they do what's kind of the closest thing that I can think to it? Like they do like sorbets that have like orange or peach flavors around me, and I've seen people add like chocolate syrup to it. Um, so it's like it's that's not that far out. I guess is probably the closest thing that I have around me to it. Okay, look at that. Okay, so could not load. Well, the nice part is the bug reproduces. I come here out of curiosity, and now I'm hungry. I'm I'm sorry, Redark Technology. If it makes you feel any better, I'm now kind of wanting ice cream as well. Natural cause. I think this is your fault. And disappointingly, the scoop locator does not appear to have anything anywhere near me, which is highly disappointing. It appears that all of these scoop locators are there is not one on my continent, which is going to significantly limit my options. I don't know if I can make that rule though. It's fine. It reminds me to eat, actually. I have the same problem. It is very easy to get in the zone and then immediately start losing your mind, chasing stuff down. Okay. So air running build release. Okay, so I'm curious now if this... Because this shouldn't be anything different than a .NET pack, right? Beginning to package. Blah, blah, blah. Could not load file or assembly. Okay, so this... Okay, so there is some issue with Velopack builds targets file and what Uno's does and or what Microsoft does. I'm curious though if I open up let's see. If we go here, right? And then we do a .NET publish. What happens? Okay. Let's see. I think let's see, net 9.0. I think it's gonna want me to pass a RID as well. Let's see. Because I don't think it's happy, but I'm really just trying to see if it's like I know the Velopack stuff isn't gonna freak out. Yeah, I need to figure out. Okay, so .NET Publish worked, but right-clicking in Visual Studio did not. Interesting. Interesting. So if I grab this, right, and pop this thing open. So this is the output when you run Velopack, right? You get some manifest files that list out the versions. There's currently the package format resembles the NuGet package for historical reasons because this originally started from the Squirrel installer. But then you get a standard setup exe that actually contains a copy of your app. You get a portable zip that you can xcopy deploy however you want, and then future versions there'll be a Delta package here as well so that it doesn't have to update the whole thing. Okay, so .NET Publish works, but right-click Publish doesn't. So the question is, what is in you? So this should be the same thing.
I am willing to bet I just need to specify some additional parameters to line up with this XML file, and then I bet you it reproduces. So let's try that. So if we do the rid of win x64 to match line 9, I don't think the published directory really matters that much. Self-contained is going to be --sc. Let's see, publish single file is false, which I think means we just omit it. Ready to run. Well, we should probably do configuration release, shouldn't we? Yeah, so we need to do configuration release. Let's see, if configuration is debug, no. So ready to run should be true, and trimmed should be true. Okay, so love the casing false true. Yeah. I'm sure they accept. Well, I'm sure. I know they accept PRs. So I'm sure it's just sitting in their new project template. It's probably somebody did one and nobody ever went back to change it because it doesn't make that big of a difference. Where is the? Am I blind or stupid? Ready to run. I don't see it. Huh. So I don't know how to do those. We got the target framework. Well, let's try with here and see if this is enough to reproduce or not. I think that's the real question, is how much do I need to type to make this thing reproduce? Because at the end of the day, that's what I care most about, is can I make it happen? Because it's already in the targets. And that produced just fine. Interesting. So if we go here, I can't imagine there's much. That doesn't matter to me, I don't think. Deployment. Nope. We already checked the Uno platform, so it must be build. Somewhere in here, it's doing it to me. Cross-gen. Yeah, so something in here is being a pill. Okay, so let's see, what is going on here? So csc.exe, that is the C# compiler, and it passes oodles and gobs of crap into it. So it does that, compiles, gets a DLL output, great. Optimizing assemblies. So this is going to be the trimmed and probably the ready to run. So the idea with trimming is the compiler goes through and will pull out the bits that aren't being used and drop them. So longer compile time, but faster startup and smaller app size are the benefits, which is pretty cool. Ready to run usually is optimizations for the JIT. And for people unfamiliar with JIT, just in time, when you start up a .NET application, so C#, when you look at the DLLs, compiles into what's called intermediate language. You'll hear people call it CIL for Common Intermediate Language, or MSIL, which is the old name for Microsoft Intermediate Language. But it's something that looks kind of like assembly, but it's not really assembly. And so when you start the app up, the runtime has to take that intermediate language and convert it to the appropriate assembly based upon the CPU. So you could think ARM, x86, x64, etc. Right? Which is how you can produce any CPU DLL and have it work. Is the runtime is then responsible for doing that translation from the intermediate language down to the process architecture. That translation isn't free. It's fast, but it's not free. If you're willing to compile ahead of time, or AOT,
you can get yourself down to native CPU instructions rather than letting the JIT do it at runtime. You can do it at compile time. Again, slower compile, faster startup, faster app, which is a benefit to this because it will go through and get it down. The disadvantage is you now have to produce a x64, an x86, an ARM build, and you have to deal with that as well, which is what you get with other languages like C++, right? You don't build an any CPU, you build an x64 build, an x86 build, and deal with that. And if you want to do that in C#, you can do it as well. But C# also has the benefit of being able to say, well, we could use the runtime if we want. The disadvantage is we now have a lot of bloody configuration switches and a lot of different possible configurations, which means Microsoft testing all possibilities is pretty much moving towards 0. Yeah, if you're doing self-contained, you may as well enable ready to run. Yeah, because if you're self-contained, you aren't relying on the user to have the runtime or similar installed. Velopack does come with the option. So for anybody who might look at it, there is, where's our bootstrapping? Bootstrapping. We do have the option of bootstrapping in several things for you. So depending on what your app targets, if you need your installer to install something else on top of it, there are a decent number of things we can bootstrap in as part of it. But if you don't want your installer to bootstrap this in, you can just self-contain and publish that instead. Right? It's kind of up to you of what you want. See, I'm trying to understand what's happening because we get down to the cross-gen, right? Is that the target that's actually causing the errors? Because we do the cross-gen. This is what's confusing me is we do the cross-gen. Oh, because it's doing every bloody assembly. Oh, it's doing every single assembly. Oh, yuck. Oh, yuck. Because all that's changing is the output assembly on each of these. Okay? So then the question is, where does the bug come? Where does the bug come? So where is Velopack's issue? So we get down to here, right? This is the last cross-gen, right? Because HTTP utility. I go up to the top. Yeah, so it rips through the cross-gen on all of these. Gets further down and then triggers this to publish. Could not load file or assembly. A strongly typed assembly is required. Could not find file. So I'm wondering if it's actually the pathing problem. I'm wondering if it's just a pathing problem because these guys here, you'll note OBJ release Win64 linked. Right, and then this guy here is intentionally not going after those. So like on the could not find part of the file. Ooh, let's try ye favorite option here. So I'm just looking to see, because it tried to hunt out the Squirrel XE.
Air running, building portable package, could not find file. So this might be down in the code. Because this targets file here is something that's distributed as part of the Velopack build package. It gets down to this pack target. Only self-contained. Because we were self-contained, right? Yeah. Okay. I wrote this. What am I missing? Past Kevin was an idiot. Let's see here. Because it's actually this. So even though this thing references the build targets, this thing is calling into this task. I'm trying to look and see where it's passing in the assemblies to load, because I'm willing to bet it's going to be around this. This is going to be what bites me. I'm willing to bet. Let's see. Open contain folder. Upsidaisy. Let's see here. Then we go / paste. Yeah, so there's all the linked ones. Yeah, I am willing to bet this guy here is looking for something in the intermediate output directory. No? Strongly named assembly is required. I'm just confused as to where this is. We might have to build a debug build so I can chase it down. So this is specifically inside of Velopack. What the heck are we using this ASMResolver.net for? It's dependent. A strongly named assembly is required. Yeah, because both of these are the same assembly load. So Velopack build is failing to pick up the dependencies. Oh, I wonder. Yes. Okay. So there is not signed. Okay. Yeah, so the reason the build project ships with two directories here is because depending on whether you're publishing from Visual Studio or whether you do it from the .NET on command line, you're either going to be running in .NET Framework or just .NET or .NET Core, right? Which is what this Net 6, Net 472 is. The Net 472 is the code path we're landing in when we right-click on Visual Studio, which is likely the difference between the two. And then the fact that there isn't a strong name put on these is what is biting us, at least in a couple of these cases, right? Because it's not failing to find the assembly. it's finding it and then rejecting it. So I think what is happening is the MS Build inside of Visual Studio is attempting to load the pack task. This pack task is coming from an assembly defined up here, right? And this Velopack build DLL, right? Strongly typed TFM runtime condition, right? So it is attempting to figure out whether it goes to 472 or 60, passes in this DLL. The built-in MS Build inside of Visual Studio goes to load the Velopack DLL. That triggers the assembly load of its dependencies. It rejects a couple of the dependencies, and we fail. It's interesting that this continues to output, though. It's very interesting that this fails, that this goes to output. I am willing to bet the build package is lacking in dependencies, and this is a build process problem, not an actual Velopack build problem. I think it is a tooling on our Velopack repository rather than an issue here. Okay, that makes me feel better. Okay, cool. I will let them know that I have got at least progress, and then we'll get it done. So, but I also think that it is 12:30 and I should probably crash, since, you know, things like work and whatnot have to happen tomorrow as well. So just a reminder for everybody, going to be adjusting my stream time to Thursday nights. So whatever time it is now, add 24 hours to it. Well, add a week and 24 hours. That will be my streaming day. Specifically for next week, because it's Christmas, I am not going to stream on Christmas. I will be doing family stuff instead. But the following day, right? More coding, more fun. I appreciate people dropping in for the discussion. Furry, really appreciated the questions. Do not mind them at all. So, always good. As always, I'll see everybody next time. Happy coding.